I have just bought one of the rarest Toyotas in the world, and in this video I'm going to show you the car and we're going to do an engine swap.
Over the past year, I've been creating content with one goal, and that goal has been to build the cars that never were. To use engine swaps, modifications, paint jobs, and anything I can think of to create performance versions of models that never had one. For example, last year we transformed a completely standard Honda Jazz into what I thought a Honda Jazz Type R would have looked like from the factory if Honda had ever made one. And more recently, we have just finished the build on our Volkswagen Fox GTI, which just like the Jazz Type R, is a performance model that doesn't exist. So throughout the past couple of weeks, I've been scouring the internet to try and find the next car in the series, and I have to say, I think this one will be the craziest car we've done yet.
So with all of that said, say hello to the new car. This is my new Toyota Sera, and to explain to you why on earth I've just bought this car, I only really need to do one thing, and that is to show you these doors. This car has dihedral doors from the factory, which I think is possibly the coolest feature to ever be fitted on a car from the factory. Now, to add to the coolness, these doors actually inspired the McLaren F1. That is not a joke, it's actually true. You can look it up. But that's not the only reason why I bought this car. It is also seriously cool and quirky. This interior is full of 1990s Japanese charm. It's got no practicality whatsoever, no cup holders, no door bins, nowhere to put anything, but it does have a ginormous steering wheel. We are furnished with a 5-speed manual gearbox, and also this car has a ridiculous amount of glass. It has glass up here, glass here, glass in the back as well. It is just like driving a bubble or your nan's conservatory. I absolutely love it. Now, the Toyota Seras were only ever made in Japan, meaning in the UK, they are very rare. And the vast majority of the ones that are in the UK are all automatics. So this manual is really, really rare indeed. Also with this colour, and also with the fact this car is completely rust free, which you might not believe, but let me show you. Just take a look at this underside. It is absolutely mint. Of the rust that it does have, it is very minimal surface rust. I mean, our lower arms are looking fine. We've got absolutely no drips or leaks coming from anywhere whatsoever. We've got a completely clean chassis floor on both sides. It is all looking so clean under here. And our rear beam, I mean, just take a look at how unrusty that is. This is probably the best car I've ever bought from a rust perspective, and it is a 34-year-old import from Japan, which makes no sense, but I am not complaining. I really, really like this car. Now, the Sera does have a little bit of a flaw in my opinion, and that is what's under the bonnet. This engine is called the 5E FHE, and it is a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder engine with a measly 105 brake horsepower, which is not very exhilarating to put the foot down with. And yeah, this is the only engine configuration that these cars came with, meaning that the Sera, with its dihedral doors, never had a performance version, which I think is a very big shame. To show you what I mean, we have got the Sera on a very straight road to see how fast it can accelerate 0 to 60. So let's give it a go. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, not that exhilarating. And that's 60. What do we get?
11.18.
11.18. This is what I mean. It is very slow. So what are we going to do about this lack of performance? Well, I have come up with a bit of a plan. Now, the Sera itself might be pretty rare, but it actually shares its platform with a very common Toyota hatchback called the Starlet. And the Starlet is a very popular car to modify, which has great aftermarket support. And a lot of those parts, which are for the Starlet, will actually work on the Sera. And on top of that, whilst the Sera didn't come with a performance model, the Starlet did, and it was called the Glanzer.
The Glanzer is a renowned hot hatch from the 1990s, and it came with a 130 horsepower 1.3 litre turbo engine called the 4E FTE. And you might think that doesn't sound like a lot of horsepower, but because this engine has very strong pistons that are designed for the higher stresses that are associated with turbocharging, without forging the internals on this engine, it is capable of up to 240 brake horsepower.
And you might be seeing where I'm going with this. That is the engine that I have just bought to install into the Sera to turn this car into an absolute weapon. Take a look. So here we have a 4E FTE engine, which has come straight out of a Glanzer. Now, it also actually comes with the top mount intercooler that comes on the Glanzers from factory, which I think is pretty cool. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, surely it makes no sense to swap out this 1.5 litre engine for this 1.3. Well, it actually does make sense to sacrifice those 200 cc's of displacement because, as I mentioned, this has those stronger pistons inside the engine, which is going to allow us to safely run more boost than with this engine. This, we'd probably have to forge the internals, we'd probably have to run some really expensive engine management system, whereas this, we can just bolt it in, maybe do a few bolt-on modifications, and we can get up to 240 brake horsepower, which makes this a much more cost-effective method. So in order to make our Sera a Sera T-Sport or a Sera TRD or maybe even a Sera GT, we've got to fit this engine into this engine bay. So let's get into it. So in terms of removing our 5E FHE engine, there's actually not a lot to do under here. So I've spotted we are of course going to have to remove this exhaust because it goes straight underneath the engine. And like any other engine removal, we are going to have to take out the drive shafts as well. But something I have noticed is this car has a complete lack of a front subframe. There is no subframe like there was on the Jazz or the Fox. It's just sort of the lower arms that are bolted up to the chassis itself. I've seen there might be a clearance issue with that alternator, if you can just see that up there with this lower arm, but I'm thinking we can actually keep these on whilst we remove the engine. So all that we have to do under here is take out the drive shafts and the exhaust and this under tray, and then everything else should be up at the top. So let's get on with it.
So first things first, I had to remove the front under tray, which is just held on with a few 10mm bolts. And now the under tray is off, I have better access to remove the exhaust, so I just have to undo 3 14mm nuts to disconnect the front section from the exhaust manifold. Now that's done, I can disconnect the front section from the midsection by undoing these 2 bolts. The next thing to do is to get out the old trusty angle grinder and chop off the old exhaust hangers. There's also a little O2 sensor to take out as well. There's then one final bolt to undo and then the exhaust can be removed. Now, a very frequent comment on my channel is that I just don't clean enough of the stuff that I'm working on. So as of this video, I am turning over a new leaf and I'm going to try and clean as much of the stuff I work on as possible. So before even starting on the drive shaft, I firstly got this wheel well looking as good as I could get it. And I am by no means a professional cleaner, so any tips in the comments would be appreciated. But once that was done, I could then start with removing the drive shaft, and the first thing to do is to take out this little pin which sits in the end of the drive shaft, and my new pliers from Draper were the perfect tool for the job. The next thing to do was to remove the hub nut. And once that was done, there were 2 nuts and 1 bolt to undo to disconnect the lower ball joint from the lower arm. And to actually get the lower arm and ball joint disconnected, I did have to use the pry bar. And at this point I decided it was a good idea to try and disconnect the gearbox side of the drive shaft with the pry bar, but I very quickly realised that I had forgotten a step.
And that's gearbox oil. Nope.
So to ensure that gearbox oil wouldn't go all over the workshop floor, I made sure to undo the gearbox drain plug, drain out all of the oil, and then I could go back to the drive shafts. So after taking out the gearbox side of the drive shaft, it was then just a matter of hitting out the hub side of the drive shaft with the hammer. And once that was done, it was then just a case of doing the exact same process again on the other side. I of course wanted to make sure to keep up with my new cleaning regime, so we had to clean this wheel arch as well. It's definitely not perfect, but I do think it's an improvement. And now that's done, I could get on with doing the drive shaft. Also, just a quick reminder to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribing massively helps out the channel and it will allow me to keep on bringing you videos just like this.
So that's our drive shafts out. Now we can get the car down and start disconnecting everything from the top side of the engine bay.
Now, there are a load of jobs that we've got to get on with before we can remove the engine, and it can seem quite overwhelming sometimes, but I always just try and just go with the easiest job first. So I started off by taking out the battery. The next thing I decided to tackle was removing the airbox. And to take out that bottom half of the airbox, there's 2 bolts hiding underneath the air filter. At this point, I thought it would be a good idea to remove the front bumper and the headlights, because this would give us much better access to the front of the engine and everything that we need to disconnect there. So to get started with this, I could remove the wheel arch liners. I discovered that there was a lot of dirt hiding behind the wheel arch liner, so I could go ahead and give this a good clean as well. I then of course had to do the same thing on the other side. After that, there were a few 10mm bolts underneath the front bumper that I also had to undo, alongside bolts on both of the corners of the front bumper as well. Once that was done, it was then time to remove both of the front headlights. And they're just held in with 3 bolts and a few electrical connections. And then lastly, after removing the indicator bulbs and some final few bolts, the bumper could be taken off.
So that is one front bumper removed, and the Sera is looking very sad indeed. We have removed its face, but what I think I want to get on with now is sort of removing the AC condenser, which sits here, and then also the radiator, which sits behind it. And then once that's done, it will give us better access to sort of the front of the engine, where we can disconnect some of the wiring loom. And then we also need to take out the gear selector cables, the clutch slave cylinder, and also the power steering fluid. There are a lot of little jobs that we still need to do before we can drop this engine. So let's keep going.
So the first thing I want to remove off the front section is the AC condenser, but before I can even do that, I've firstly got to remove its fan and also the bonnet latch. After that was done, there were two mounting bolts that I had to undo, and then also behind the AC condenser there were a couple of AC lines that I had to take off as well, but then the whole AC condenser could be removed. Next, it's onto the radiator, and before even starting this, we've got to drop the coolant out of the bottom hose. And then we can disconnect the top hose as well. And lastly, there are two bolts mounting the radiator at the top, which I've also got to undo, and then the radiator can be taken out. The next thing we need to address is disconnecting what I'm going to call the gear selection system. Firstly, our clutch slave cylinder needs to be removed. Now, this component is essentially responsible for engaging and disengaging the clutch. When you press your foot down on the clutch pedal when you want to change gear, it sends hydraulic pressure to the clutch slave cylinder, which in turn controls an arm inside the gearbox, which disengages the clutch and allows you to change gear. And removing this is pretty simple. There's just two bolts mounting it into place, and we also have to disconnect the clutch line. Next, we need to take off the gear selector cables. These do what they say on the tin and allow you to select which gear you want to be in by directly connecting the shifter in the cabin to the gearbox. And as for removing these cables, there's just a pin on the end of each cable that I need to remove. And then I also need to pop off the clip that mounts each of the cables into place. Once that's done, I can then do my best to move the gear cables out of the way, and then I can move on to the throttle cable. After sliding the throttle cable out, I can then undo this bracket with two spanners, and then I can get this out of the way as well. I could also disconnect the brake servo vac line, alongside a few other vacuum lines and also some electrical connections. I then moved on to taking off the fuel lines as well. I also had to remove the power steering lines because on the Sera, the power steering is belt driven. The power steering fluid did end up going everywhere, but it wasn't a problem a bit of brake cleaner couldn't fix. The last things I had to take off were the heater matrix pipes, which just sit at the back of the engine bay, and then it was just a matter of disconnecting all of the wiring loom, making sure not to leave any plugs plugged in.
Well, I am pretty sure that is now everything disconnected. It is admittedly a little bit of a mess in here, but I think we are pretty much there now. So all we need to do is get the car up on the ramp, undo that rear engine mount, and then get the car back down, slide a pallet underneath, and then we can disconnect those final two engine mounts and then lift the car over the engine.
So I could get the car up on the ramp and get started by unbolting that rear engine mount. The car could then come down and we had to get that pallet underneath, and then I could start unbolting the final two engine mounts. We could then finally remove this engine by lifting the car up with the ramp. And the most important thing I find with doing this is slow and steady wins the race. I did use a couple of blocks of wood to help support the engine, and generally when doing this, my technique is to give the 2-post ramp a couple of blips up and then check that we've still got clearance and that there's nothing still connected and that the engine's not crashing into anything, and then give the ramp a few more blips, check again, and keep doing that until the car is completely clear of the engine.
It's pretty tight.
Well, we now have both of the engines on the floor and together, and as you can see, they basically look identical. And that is because they almost are. These engines are both a part of the same family, the Toyota E-Series. Obviously, this is the 5E FHE, and this is the 4E FTE. So this engine and this engine are basically like brother and sister, but there are some subtle differences. Obviously, with this engine coming from the factory turbocharged, it has those stronger pistons that I mentioned earlier, and it also has an exhaust manifold which accommodates the turbo, but this specific exhaust manifold is actually aftermarket because the previous owner wanted to upgrade it, which is pretty cool. We also have, obviously, our turbo, and then the oil return from the turbo going into the sump, which this engine doesn't have. So it does have some minor differences, but because these engines are a part of the same family, we can generally use all of the stuff from this on this. Stuff like the drive shafts, the engine mounts, the gearbox, all of those parts we can just put on this engine and then bolt it in. So it should be a pretty easy swap.
So to get started with swapping some stuff over from the 5E to the 4E, we firstly needed to swap this oil pressure sensor, and the only reason is that the plugs are different on both of the engines, so to make it work with our current wiring loom, we need to use the oil pressure sensor from the 5E on the 4E. So once I had removed both of the oil pressure sensors, I could then get the 5E's one fitted onto the 4E. And after that was done, we could move on to swapping over the gearbox. So as for taking the gearbox off our 5E, there's just a few 17mm and 14mm bolts to undo. And once those are undone, the gearbox can be pulled free.
That is up there with one of the lightest gearboxes I have ever lifted. Now, we are going to go ahead and just whack this straight on, and I know a few of you are going to be wondering why we are not installing a new clutch. And the reason being is that later on down the line with the Sera project, we are going to be doing a big power video where we try and make this engine as spicy as we can possibly make it. And in that video, we will be installing a new clutch. So this clutch is just temporary, just to get the car running and driving. But later on down the line, a lot of the jobs that I know a lot of you will be screaming at me in the comments for not doing, we will be doing later, so don't worry.
So once I had got the 5E's gearbox fitted onto the 4E, I could then get it bolted up. We also had to swap over both of the radiator coolant hoses. The clutch slave cylinder had to get refitted as well. And once that was done, the final things to transfer over was firstly the AC pump, because I wanted AC in the Sera, which is basically a glass box, and also the power steering pump, because as you can see on both of the engines, they are slightly different. And after getting both of those pumps off the 5E, I could work on getting them on the 4E.
Okay, so I have just realised why the two power steering pumps on the engines are different. They actually have different mounting brackets for the tensioners, and the reason why they have different mounting brackets is because the oil filter is further over this way on the 4E to accommodate for the turbo. Basically meaning we are going to have to use the 4E's power steering pump. Obviously, I didn't realise this before, but this hasn't been a waste of time because we still need to get our AC pump fitted as well. So we're going to do that, but then get the 4E power steering pump refitted back onto the engine. Right, so that is everything swapped over from the 5E onto the 4E, meaning it is now ready to be installed. And the plan is to get all of the ECU connected up, to get the fuel lines in, and to try and start this engine in this video. And I have brought a friend along, Tom. You might remember him from the Jazz videos. He helped us get the K20 in the Jazz, and we are going to get the engine fitted into the Sera, so let's do it.
So after getting the engine into position, we could work on lowering the Sera down and bolting the engine into place.
So it needs to come forward loads. Yeah, that'll do. No, yeah, keep going. That sounded good.
You don't need to do that. Keep going. Yep, that'll do.
Once both the driver's and passenger side engine mounts were done up, we could then get the car up on the ramp and do up the rear engine mount. Once the engine was fully mounted, Tom and I could then go over the whole wiring loom and try to get it all connected up.
Okay, so we have run into a slight problem. Essentially, at the beginning of this, I thought the only sensor we'd have to swap over from the 5E to the 4E was that oil pressure sensor, but it turns out we have to swap over a fair few more sensors, like the knock sensor. Our alternator needs to be changed as well. It's not that deep, it is just a case of swapping stuff over, but this definitely would have been a lot easier with the engine out.
So to get on with this, Tom could get on with swapping over the alternator and the knock sensor.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. So this is our old alternator, and you'll see the plug on the back is a 3-pin sort of rectangular style. And our new / old alternator is a nice big round plug. Oh, yes. So the wiring wasn't compatible.
So whilst Tom was getting that alternator fitted onto the 4E, I could work on getting our throttle position sensor swapped over as well, because that was another thing we forgot to swap over. And once that was done, the last things we had to connect up was firstly the fuel lines, and then also the battery.
I was sort of ready for that.
Yeah, it happened last time.
This car has like an immobiliser on it where it's
So I scared the shit out of you.
Yes! I'm a normal human being. Well, say that.
Now is time for the moment of truth. Will the 4E FTE engine start? We've connected the minimal amount of stuff possible to make it start, so that's most of the wiring loom and also the fuel lines. So we're going to turn the key over now and see if it will start. But there is one big caveat. We are using the 5E's ECU and not the correct 4E's ECU. It hasn't turned up yet. I have ordered it, but we're just going to try and see if it will start on the 5E's ECU. So let's give it a go. Tom, whenever you are ready, send it. Ooh. Come on. Okay, cut it. It's so nearly started then. I think so. Hang on. There's no reason why you wouldn't have fuel pressure though. Yeah, go again, go on. Come on. It is. Tom. What the heck? Oh, Tom, kill it. That's good. That has got to be up there one of the roughest first starts we've had on the channel. First things first, we have to address something which I didn't even mention in the previous video, and that is thermostats. I have had to actually buy a new one for reasons I will explain. The reason is neither of these two thermostats are compatible with our new setup. This is the thermostat that came off the old engine. This has 1, 2, 3 plugs. This one, which is off our 40 FTE, the engine that's in the car at the minute, only has 1, 2 plugs, and the plugs are different. So we can't use the 4E FTE one, but we also can't use the 5E FHE one because our 4E one, as you can see, has these two really important coolant lines that go to cool down our turbo. And of course, because the 5E FHE engine was naturally aspirated, it doesn't have those two coolant lines. So we can't use this one because it doesn't have enough coolant lines, and we can't use this one because it doesn't have enough plugs, and the plugs are wrong. So I have had to buy this one, which has 3 plugs. It has all the plugs we need, and it has our 2 coolant lines for the turbo. So this one should work.
So the first thing to do to get our new thermostat housing installed is to scrape off all of that old residual sealant. And doing this will make sure that we have a proper watertight seal when we come to fit the new one. Next, I can go ahead and apply sealant to the mating surface of that new thermostat housing. And then I can get it fitted. To finish, I could plug in all of the electrical connections and connect up all of the coolant lines.
Next up, we have this. This is our tiny little baby downpipe. This engine didn't come with a downpipe, so I needed to buy this off eBay, and it should sit on our turbo, kind of like that. We will obviously have to put our gasket on in the middle, and also it comes with the lambda sensor, so we can just get that plugged in as well. So let's get this fitted. Right, so that is our downpipe fitted onto the car. Now we can move on to a quick service. I want to make sure this engine is nice and healthy as possible for that first drive. Now I would usually do this service at the end, but the oil filter is in a very weird place, so it's easier to do it now. So we're going to drop the oil and also replace our spark plugs. Let's do it.
So I could start the service by undoing the oil drain plug and draining out all of the old oil. Of course, the next thing to do is to remove the oil filter. And then, of course, our fresh new filter could be fitted. After filling up the engine with 3 litres of fresh new oil, I could then move on to the spark plugs. And the old spark plugs were looking a little bit worn, so it's a good job that we're replacing them. The last part of the service is to fill up the gearbox oil, because if you remember in the previous video we had to remove the gearbox oil in order to take out the drive shafts, but now to fill the gearbox oil back up we have to put the drive shafts back in first, so I could go ahead and do that. And whilst I was at it I also did up the lower ball joints. So once both of the drive shafts were in, I could then fill up the gearbox oil. And the gearbox needed around 2 litres of oil, but the best way to tell when you're finished filling it up is when oil just comes straight back out of the fill plug.
So that is our service done. We are making some pretty good progress. We've got some fresh oil in the engine, our oil filter's been changed, we've got the spark plugs in, our gearbox oil has been topped up, and of course we have got our drive shafts in as well. But now that is all done, you might think we have some more work to do up at the top, which we do, but we're actually going to get the wheels back on the car because it needs to go on a recovery truck, because right now we are taking this car to go and get a very exciting modification. So I've brought the Sera here to the exhaust company, and of course, we are here to get a fresh new custom exhaust system. Okay, so the plan for our exhaust is to basically connect up this rear section which we've got on the car to our downpipe which we fit on earlier in the video. Now the guys here at the exhaust company have pointed something out to me, and it is that this exhaust, our rear section, is very small in diameter, meaning that our exhaust gases aren't going to be able to travel through this very well, and there's going to be a lot of back pressure, meaning we're going to struggle to make the horsepower. But of course, the goal in this video is to just get the car driving, so I think all we're going to do is do an exhaust system which is good for a lot of horsepower from our downpipe up here to our mid and rear section, and then later on when we come to do a big horsepower video, we will then replace this little mid and rear section with a bigger diameter mid and rear section. But for now, we're just going to get the car running and driving and connect up this section of the exhaust with our downpipe.
Now, building a custom exhaust takes a heck of a lot of experience and skill, and the guys here at the exhaust company are experts. So the first thing that Josh had to do was actually to remove the downpipe that we installed earlier, because he had to cut off the flange on the downpipe and replace this with a V-band. So once Josh had finished welding the V-band onto the downpipe, he could then get on with making the rest of the exhaust. Now, creating a custom exhaust takes a lot of measuring, cutting, stretching, and of course, welding. Also, just a quick reminder to smash that subscribe button if you haven't already, because it massively helps out the channel and will allow me to keep on bringing you these videos.
So that is the exhaust for the Sera made, or the front section, and as you can see, it's been pretty easy to make because most of it is just one straight pipe. But now that is done, all we need to do is make some exhaust hangers, and then we can go ahead and get this fitted.
So Josh could firstly fit our new custom section onto the car for the final time, and then he could tackle the task of making some new exhaust hangers. The way he does this is by using a rod of stainless steel and this bendy machine to bend it into the right shape, and then he can go ahead and TIG weld it onto the exhaust. And once that was done, the exhaust was finished.
We're back. Now that the Sera has got a beautiful new exhaust, we can move on to all of the other jobs that we need to do to get this car driving. And the first thing we're going to tackle is the ECU. So here we have our new ECU. This is for a 4EFTE, obviously, the engine which we've got in the Sera. If you remember in the previous video, we actually ran the engine for the first time on the wrong ECU, and it actually started. But because the old engine and the new engine are so similar, it did actually work. But the only problem with the old ECU is that it did not understand the concept of turbochargers and boost. And of course, we have a turbocharger on this engine now, whereas the old engine didn't. So this ECU understands turbochargers and boosts. So this one will allow us to run the engine and the turbocharger and the setup that we've got at the minute. So let's get it fitted.
So to start, I could work on removing the 5E FHE ECU, and this was a lot easier said than done. This is one of the most fiddly, annoying jobs I've done on this car so far.
Let me just cut this whole back now. It's out. I think if we undo these two, it will allow us to flex this a little bit, maybe. Yeah, just gives that bit of flex. Hated that. That's genuinely up there with one of the worst things I've ever removed.
100%.
That was awful.
We're a dead man.
Whoever designed that needs to go into prison. They
Maximum
need
security.
maximum prison sentence. They need jail time. That genuinely should be a crime.
Now, whilst the old ECU was very difficult to remove, the good news is that the new ECU is basically exactly the same. The plugs can just be plugged straight in, and we don't have to do any alterations at all, so it is nice and simple. So in terms of getting the new ECU installed, I firstly bolted up 2 out of the 3 mounting brackets.
Okay. So now he sits in there like that. I think those are the only 2 that we put in.
Yeah.
Because that would make it a lot easier to install, I think.
I could then go ahead and try to get the ECU mounted into place.
That actually wasn't that bad.
Once the ECU was mounted up, it was then just a case of getting all of the electrical connections plugged together. After that was done, I could then get our interior trim piece and our glove box fitted back on.
Okay, that's in.
Works pretty good.
I never want to do that again. But do you want to know the funny thing?
Go on.
We're going to have to do it again.
Why?
When we remap the car. Not today, luckily. But when we remap the car, that ECU's got to come out.
We'll be experienced.
Yeah, it's fair. We'll be experienced, but I'll also be experienced in depression too.
So now that our ECU is installed, we can move on to fitting on this new little sensor, and it is called a map sensor. It is essentially just responsible for telling the ECU how much airflow the engine's getting. Now, the reason why we need to change this one over from our standard one, which sits here at the back of the engine bay, is because this one is for a 4E FTE, a turbocharged car. This one is obviously for our standard 5E FHE engine, and it doesn't understand turbochargers. So we're going to replace these over. Let's do it.
So I could unplug our old map sensor and plug in our new 4E FTE one.
Okay, so now all we need to do is fill up our coolant. We've got our AC condenser to go on the front, and then it is just a case of getting our headlights on, our front bumper, and also our wheel arch liners.
But just as we were getting to the point where there was not much work left to do, something started leaking.
Wait, why is it leaking from there? Why is it leaking from all of our coolant? We've done all of our coolant lines. We've got our top one, our bottom one. Both of our heater matrix pipes are already plugged in. That is very confusing.
It was very strange because you wouldn't expect a coolant leak to come out of the bottom of the crank pulley. I really couldn't get my head around it. It was nowhere near the thermostat, which we had fit earlier, and the vast majority of our coolant lines were on the other side of the engine bay. So why it was leaking from this location was a complete mystery to me.
That could be very bad, but fingers crossed it's not. That could be very bad.
Oh no.
Yeah, that could be really bad. That could be really bad.
I'm not gonna lie, at this point I was pretty worried. I was thinking that I might even have to remove the whole engine and undo all of the work that we've done so far in this video just to get to the bottom of this water leak.
Oh dear. Oh no.
Well, you all can let me know in the comments if you've ever seen a coolant leak coming from the bottom of the crankshaft pulley, because it is definitely a first for me. So that evening I had to just go home and do some research to try and find out what this issue was.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, I think I have got to the bottom of this problem, and it's not the water pump, which is what I initially thought it was. It is this little guy right here. This is called a core plug, and they look like sort of beer bottle caps, and basically what these guys do is you tap them into the block and they are supposed to stop any coolant from leaking out. R1, I think, has failed, and the reason why I definitely think it is this over the water pump is that location of where it was leaking. These sit right above the crankshaft pulley, so it would make a lot of sense that one of these has gone. The bad news is that we've got to take off our alternator belt, we've got to take off our power steering pump and AC belt, and we've got to take off our timing belt cover and the timing belt, and then we can get to the location of this and tap it in. Now, that is practically impossible to do with the engine still in the car. In fact, I think it would take me even longer. So we do have to remove the engine. So I'm going to quickly do that, and then we can go from there. So 3, 2, 1. I suppose that is the benefit of working on old cars. That literally took me an hour and 20 minutes to take that engine out. But now we can try and get to the bottom of this leak.
But, ladies and gentlemen, as I was taking off the top half of the timing belt cover, I saw something which completely shocked me. I have just spotted something which means this engine is gone. I don't think we're going to be able to use this. Let me show you what I've just found. So after taking off that cover, you can see our core plug here and our core plug here, but look at the crack in the block just there. That is what is causing our leak. It is a huge crack in the block. That is not ideal. You can see it just there. I'll try and get it to focus, but yeah. Oh, dearie me. Okay, so I don't think we're going to be able to use this engine. Oh, damn. I have had bad luck with engines recently. I had that forged engine for the Fox that was kaput, and this one as well. Damn it. I actually don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. My luck is terrible. My luck is absolutely terrible. Okay, I need to make a phone call. Right, 3, 2, 1.
So yes, this is engine number 2. It is another 4E FTE, and lucky for me, this engine I bought off a really, really nice guy, a very reputable guy in the Starlet and Glanzer scene, and obviously he didn't know about this damage, so he has just straight up replaced this engine for me, and it's a really nice one. It's got a reconditioned head, as you can see. It's all been redone, but now we do have the mammoth task of swapping all of the stuff from this engine onto this. That's like the exhaust manifold, the turbo, the inlet manifold, all of the belts, the gearbox, the clutch. And that's just beginning. There's loads of stuff we've got to do, so we better get started. So something I have done just to keep me organised is I have made a big list of all of the things that we need to swap over from our old engine onto our new one, and as you can see, it is a pretty big list. So I think we'll start with the spark plugs.
So obviously our spark plugs in the old engine were our nice new ones, so I wanted to make sure that our new ones were in our new engine. So it was just a case of taking out our distributor leads and then getting the 16mm socket, undoing them and swapping them over. With the spark plug swapped over, I could also do the distributor and the leads. I could then tick these parts off my list. Next, I wanted to tackle the auxiliary belts and changing over the alternator as well. And to do this, I started off by loosening off the tensioner on the power steering and AC pump belt. And once it was loose enough, the belt could be taken off. And then I could go ahead and do the same thing on the alternator side, whilst also remembering to take off the alternator itself as well. Now, I of course wanted to retain my air conditioning, so I had to transfer over the AC pump too. I could then get all of this stuff fitted onto the new engine. I also fitted the top half of the timing belt cover from the old engine onto our new engine. And once that was done, the auxiliary belts could be fitted. One more thing to swap over was this knock sensor, which is on the new engine. We had to swap it over with this knock sensor on the old engine. And whilst I was at it, I could also swap over the rear heater matrix pipe as well. The oil pressure sensor that was originally on the standard engine also had to be swapped over too. Now, really annoyingly, I had to uninstall the thermostat which I had installed earlier on in the video off our old engine onto the new engine. And again, it is just the exact same process. So once the thermostat housing mating surface on the new engine was nice and clean, I could then get the sealant on our thermostat housing again for the second time in this video and install it onto our new engine. Now, at this point, it was all going pretty well, but I'm not even joking, my luck was about to get even worse. So the next thing I wanted to move on to was transferring the whole exhaust manifold and turbo setup from our old engine onto our new engine. And I did manage to remove this off the old engine without any dramas, but it was when I tried to install this onto our new engine that the unthinkable happened.
The saying, if you don't laugh, you'll cry, I think is very appropriate here. In the grand scheme of things, this is quite funny, how awful this luck is, but let me show you what's just happened. So, I was just tightening up all of the nuts for the exhaust manifold studs, 1, 2, 3, and 4. What can you see that's that's wrong there? So what's happened clearly is I'm tightening up this nut, and this, which had been previously repaired, I thought it had been welded, but quite clearly someone's just used super glue or something like that, and it's just pulled straight away from the head. And now that head is unusable. The only redeeming thing here is that we do have a good block with this engine, the second engine, and we have a good head with the first engine. So in theory, we could do a little switcheroo and put the block of the second engine with the head of the first engine. But then that is a lot of work. We've got to do a whole head gasket, which is obviously skimming the head, which is a whole process. We've got to order a head gasket kit, which will take a few days to arrive. And then we've also got to do the timing with all of that, making sure the engine is timed properly. That's a big job. This is my Toyota Sera, and I tried to fit these two engines into the car, and it did not go to plan.
And that's because previously, we set out on a mission to build the performance version of the Toyota Sera that never existed. And whilst trying to get the car driving after installing a new high-performance engine, we discovered a catastrophic issue.
Oh dear. That could be very bad.
And after removing the whole engine from the car to investigate this issue, we found a huge hole in the bottom half of the engine, meaning that it was completely toast.
I actually don't know what to do.
But I was determined not to be defeated, so I bought this, a second engine to fit into the Sera, but little did I know, my luck was about to get even worse. When trying to swap over the parts from the first engine to our new one, this massive crack appeared, which meant we had two dead engines.
But hopefully my bad luck has run out, because I think I have come up with a solution. So whilst both of these engines by themselves are dead, we can actually combine these two engines together to make one good engine.
And I'm hoping that by doing this, by the end of the video, we will actually get this car running and even driving.
Right, so here is our plan of action. Now, these engines are made up of two main parts, the top half and the bottom half, otherwise known as the head and the block. And the problem with the first engine was that it had a massive hole in the block, whereas the second engine had a big crack in the head. So technically, we could take the head from our first engine and the block from our second engine and combine these together to make one good engine. How hard could that be?
Well, I was about to find out, because this is the first time that I've ever attempted anything like this, because as many of you know, I am not a mechanic. So I was really just hoping that I could pull this off without breaking anything and without anything going wrong.
3, 2, 1.
That is one inlet manifold.
Now, in order to execute this plan of splitting both of these engines in half and then doing a little switcheroo, we have to access the head bolts, and to access those, we need to take off the rocker cover.
Here are our camshafts. We have our exhaust cam here and our inlet cam here. We can now go ahead and remove these because it will give us access to undo all of the head bolts, which will allow us to remove the head.
Now, working on the insides of an engine like this can be quite intimidating. You do have to be a bit more methodical and careful, but if you can follow a set of instructions, then it is quite doable, even for someone like me with no qualifications. So once I had taken off all of the camshaft caps, both camshafts could then be removed.
Nice one. Okay, so now the cams are out. You can see we have a head bolt here, a head bolt here, there, and there. We now need to undo all of those, and then the head can be lifted off. Okay, that's one.
Now, undoing head bolts is actually a pretty physically demanding job because these bolts are pretty much the tightest bolts on the whole car. But using the breaker bar gave me a little bit more leverage, and I did manage to get them all undone.
Jeez, these are tight, man.
Even with the breaker bar.
Even with the breaker bar. There we go.
Taking off the head then revealed the block of the first engine. Now, of course, we aren't going to be using this because this is the block that has all the damage. However, we will be using the head. But before doing anything else, I had to take this head to the machine shop where it needed to be skimmed and also vacuum tested. So we started off with the vacuum test. Now, for an engine to be running well, the valves that let the air in and the exhaust gases out need to be able to create a vacuum-tight seal when they are closed, and that's what we are testing for here, to make sure that the valves are doing that. Now, we want this gauge to read around about 20, so let's see how our valves are sealing. After checking the first port, it was okay, around 20. The second port, again, around 20, that's good. The third port was all okay as well. But the fourth port, as you can see, was reading about 15, which isn't as good. To fix this, we did something called relapping a valve, which is basically where you smooth the surface between the valve and the valve seat, which hopefully prevents any future leaks. Once that was done, Matt could get the valve refitted, and then it was onto the head skimming. This process uses this big machine, and this will make sure that the mating surface of the head is perfectly flat, so that when we put the two halves of the engine together, we don't have any head gasket problems. And as you can see, after the skimming was done, it leaves this nice, shiny, flat mating surface. The final thing to do is to get the head in this big steam oven, and after 15 minutes, it can be taken out and it looks as good as new.
So here we have our new head after it's been skimmed. That underside is looking very nice indeed. And also we now have the peace of mind that our valves are properly sealing. And now all we need to do is put that head on this block. But as you can see, we still have the old head on this block. So we need to remove this, but you've already seen me do that. So we'll get it done in 3, 2, 1.
But my luck, if you would believe it, was about to take a further nosedive because what we found in the block of the new engine definitely wasn't good news.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. Oh my god. Okay, so for all of you at home who's wondering what's happening here, there is loads of water in one of the cylinders. Look, have a look. It's like a pond. You probably find some fishes swimming around in that. Okay, but jokes aside, that is really bad.
And that is because water in a cylinder like this can cause rust, which can cause pitting on the cylinder walls. And this can result in a permanently damaged cylinder, which can't retain as much compression, resulting in power and fuel inefficiencies, increases in oil consumption, and even misfires. So this really wasn't the best sign.
This engine has been through a tough life. A really tough life. Maybe you could, because what I'm scared of, because we've literally just found a pond in this cylinder, I'm scared that this is going to be like hydrolocked, this piston.
Hydrolocking occurs when water enters a cylinder whilst the engine is running. Since water isn't compressible like air, if it enters the cylinder whilst the engine is running, it can cause massive damage to the internals of that engine. We just have to hope that this water entered the cylinder after the engine was removed from its donor car, but if it's been in there since the car last ran, this could be catastrophic again.
What we can do, we can test this though. We can get a breaker bar on the crankshaft pulley. We can try and turn the engine over, and if the engine turns over, we're fine. But if it's like locked, then not very good.
So that's exactly what I tried to do next. I firstly sprayed some WD-40 in all 4 of the cylinders just to help sort of lubricate them, and then I got my breaker bar on the crankshaft pulley and gave it a try.
Oh. Okay. Yes is the answer. It does. So it does turn over, which is a very good sign. We are not hydrolocked. Now, the only thing that we should check for now is sort of pitting in the cylinder walls. If there's like rust pitting in the cylinder walls, that can be very bad. But there's a little bit of like grit in there, a little bit of like gritty material from all the rust, but we can clean that out. I think that's okay. As long as we have compression, which we can check when we put the head on, I think we will be fine. So we can now go ahead and get this engine built.
So was I sure that our water had caused our engine absolutely no damage? No, I wasn't, but I suppose we are just going to have to wait until later on in the video when I turn the key over for the first time to see if this engine runs or not. But for now, we have a long list of jobs that we have to get on with if we want to get this car running and driving in this video. And the first thing on that list is getting the head of the engine fitted onto the block.
Head on.
Now, when installing a head, there's a few things to remember. You have to use new head bolts, and you also have to tighten up these head bolts in the correct torque sequence.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Once the head has been torqued down correctly, we can then get the camshafts fitted. And just like with torquing down the head, the cams need to be tightened down in a specific order with a specific torque setting.
And that's how you do it.
So now the head is on and the cams are in, it is time to replace this old timing belt. Now, like a lot of things I'm trying in this video, this is completely new to me. I have never timed up a belt-driven engine in my life, so I'm just really hoping that I can get it right. Now, with timing up an engine, the key is to get the bottom half and the top half both in their top dead center position. This is basically the position where cylinder 1 is at the top of its range of motion, hence the term top dead center. Once that's done, the timing marks should line up perfectly, and then the belt can be put on. And after getting this new belt on, our tensioner could then be set. The final thing to do was to turn the engine over twice to check that our timing marks lined up, and that would confirm that we'd done it correctly.
We're good, we're timed up. I actually can't. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the first time I've ever done a timing belt, and I think, fingers crossed, we've done it correctly. I'm very pleased.
But this happy moment was soon overshadowed. It seems the universe hasn't finished dealing me even more bad luck, because as I was reinstalling the engine mount, I discovered yet another project-ending problem.
Oh, mate.
At this point, all I could do was just sit in silence in pure disbelief.
I feel like we've come so far. We can't lose to this. We can't lose to this. I don't know.
We've not had 1, nor 2, but we have had 3 catastrophic issues with engines I've bought for this Sera build. It genuinely has to be a lifetime of bad luck all at once. Let me show you what's happened. So these three, 1, 2, 3 engine mount bolt holes are supposed to hold up the driver's side engine mount. And as you can see, 2 out of 3 of the bolt holes have huge cracks running down the middle. And I actually noticed this when I was trying to install the engine mount back on. I just couldn't tighten up those 2 bolts. It wasn't working. And this leaves us at a point where we can no longer use this block, because holding an engine mount with 1 out of the 3 bolts it needs is nowhere near strong enough. So what are our solutions? Option 1 is we try and fix it with welding. Option 2 is we try and find another engine. Option 3 is we fit all of the turbo parts onto the original Sera engine. So which one do we choose? So option 1, welding it up, would be the least amount of work. But with this, we'd need to find a specialist welder to come and fix it for us. And the people that I've already spoken to about trying to sort this aren't 100% sure that this is fixable, so it may end up being a massive waste of time. As for option 2, finding another engine, that is a lot easier said than done, because these engines are very rare. But even if we did find one, it would take us a long time to receive it, and then on top of that, we have no guarantee that that engine wouldn't just be another disaster. That then leaves us with the third and final option. We turbocharge the Sera's original engine. But not only do we know that this engine runs and drives, but it might actually be a better alternative altogether. Let me explain. So as many of you know, the 4E FTE engine that we were about to put in the Sera is a 1.3 litre, but the original 5E FHE engine is a 1.5 litre. That actually means that if we use the original engine, it has a higher potential for power, but there are some things that we've got to sort out first. Firstly, the head of the 5E is a lot worse for performance than the head of the 4E. This is due to many factors, such as it not having as stiff valve springs. That all means that if we wanted to use the 5E's block, we'd have to use the 4E's head. And on top of that, we're going to have to fit a thicker head gasket in between the block and the head to make sure that we can lower the compression in the cylinders. So if we do these two things and fit the 4E head and the thicker head gasket, there's a possibility we could have an engine that is far superior and more powerful than the one we were originally going to use. So with all of that said, we are not letting this defeat us. We are going with option 3.
So because we were about to perform a surgery on this original Sera engine, we firstly had to get it on the engine stand. Next, we really frustratingly had to undo all of the hard work that we had just done on our 4E FTE because we had to remove the head. After taking out the cams, I could then remove the head bolts. And soon after, I could lift off the head itself. Once that was done, I could then go and do that exact same thing on the 5E. Now, many of you might be wondering why I didn't think to use the 5E's block all along if it is that much better to use. Well, for starters, to run this Frankenstein setup with the 4E head and the 5E block, we're going to have to use a standalone ECU, which is a lot more expensive. There are other reasons, such as wanting to get the car driving as soon as possible, alongside concerns about the reliability issues related to cylinder compression. However, our hand has been forced with this one, and I might have to spend a bit more money and put in a bit more work, but the end product will be a Toyota Sera which has a much torquier, powerful and fun engine. So now the 5E head has been removed, I can now move on to the next job, which is to remove the oil sump or the oil pan, and this is for a very important reason.
And that reason is this sump, which came off the 5E FHE engine. As you can see, it is a sump with no holes in it, which is usually good, but we need a sump with a hole in it. And the reason why we need a hole in our sump is because obviously we are running a turbocharged setup on this engine now, and of course it was naturally aspirated before, so it had no turbo, and basically with the turbos they need oil, and they need oil going into them and oil going out of them as well, called the oil return, and that oil that comes out runs back into the sump. So we basically need to put this sump on because we need that oil return line, and this sump down here doesn't have a hole in it for an oil return line, so that's why we need to get this on.
So let's get it fitted.
Now, I previously removed this blue sump with the hole in it off our old 40 FTE engine, and after giving the mating surface a clean up with the Stanley blade, I could then apply some black gasket maker onto that mating surface and get this sump fitted. But there was a problem.
Why is that not going down?
It's just not going down. Seriously debating just taking this off, wiping it all off and giving it another go.
That's good. Well, that didn't go very well. Terribly, some would say. Also might have been a good idea to do a test fit. And this smells absolutely awful.
So after giving the mating surface of the engine and the sump a thorough clean, we soon discovered that the 4E FTE sump is actually a completely different shape to the 5E sump, which is why it couldn't fit. This just makes things even more complicated because later on we're going to have to do some welding and modification to this sump. But for now, the new multi-layered steel 1.4mm thick head gasket alongside brand new ARP head bolts have just arrived, so we can now install the head. And because we are going to be running even more power through this new engine setup, I wanted to make sure that absolutely every gasket was brand new and all of our important hardware, like the head bolts for example, was the best quality. Now, something I love about these ARP head bolts is that they come with detailed instructions on how to properly bolt down the head. It mentions important steps such as cleaning the head bolt holes properly with brake cleaner, lubricating the head bolts, and of course our torque sequence. So the torque sequence specified was to tighten up the bolts in 3 different steps. Firstly at 27 Newton meters, then at 54, and then finally at 81. So now the head has been properly installed, there is another really big job that we need to get on with, and it's actually to do with the oil filter. Now on the 5E, because it doesn't have a turbo sitting on the exhaust manifold, this is where the oil filter sits. But on the turbocharged 4E, the oil filter actually sits on this sort of relocation housing, which has one big bolt through the middle with 3 studs holding it in. If you take the housing and the studs out, this is what it looks like. But spot the difference between the 4E and the 5E. As you can see, there are no threaded holes in the 5E for the 3 studs to go in. This means that I have to undertake quite possibly the most challenging mechanical job I have ever attempted. And that job is to make 3 bolt holes that are exactly the right width, depth, and location, and then on top of that I have to tap in a new thread into these holes with a tap and die set. And this is on the only block that we have left that isn't broken, when I have never done this before. It's safe to say I was very nervous doing this job. So I thought doing one hole at a time was probably the best way of doing this, so after drilling the first small pilot hole, I could then use the correct diameter drill bit with a sharpied mark on the end to tell me how deep to drill, to then make that first stud hole. And after finishing up with that, I could then get out the ratchet with the tapping tool on it and create our new threads. I could then test fit the stud and then rinse and repeat that process 2 more times.
Can't lie, for someone who like 2 years ago couldn't even do an oil change, I'm pretty proud of that. That is absolutely beautiful. So if you're wondering why we've not done this one, it's because the hole, I accidentally did it in like the wrong place. So like the stud didn't line up, so we're gonna have to run with 2, but I think 2 is still way better than none. And I think, oh, look how mint that is.
So now that's done, I could then go ahead and give the mating surface one final clean before installing our brand new gasket, which I bought from Toyota, and then the oil filter housing could be fitted on. So the next small job I could quickly get on with was installing the correct oil pressure and knock sensors onto the engine block. I'd previously removed these sensors off this engine to fit them onto the 4E FTE, but here I am fitting them back onto the original engine block. And once that was done, I could then move on to the camshafts.
Next, we're going to move on to installing our camshafts. Now, I was originally going to install the 4E FTE camshafts, but I have done some research, and apparently these camshafts, the 5E FHE camshafts, are actually really desirable, and they're much better to put in the 4E head over the 4E cams. And the reason being is that these camshaft lobes are actually far more aggressive, and they allow for more valve lift, meaning we can actually get more horsepower with these. So let's get them fitted.
So like the 4E FTE cams that we installed earlier, installing these cams from the 5E is the exact same process. But once that was done, we could then go and visit the best welders in the game to go and get our sump modified.
So both of our oil sumps are now here at the exhaust company, and basically all we are going to do is chop this oil return out and make a big hole in this one and then weld it in. Pretty simple, let's get on with it.
So after doing a bit of measuring up, Josh could then make a hole in the sump with the drill. And once that was done, it was just a case of cleaning up the surface and then welding on the oil return pipe to the sump.
So that is our sump with our oil return now welded on. A big thanks goes to the guys here at the exhaust company for getting that sorted out so quickly, but now we can go back to the unit and get this fitted.
So now we're back, we can work on getting our modified sump installed. But before doing so, we noticed something pleasantly surprising.
We have just made an amazing discovery. I think all the bad luck that we've had up until this point with this project is just the universe's way of pointing us towards using this engine over the 4 EFTEs that we've been buying, because we have found out that the rods in this engine are ridiculously thick. Take a look at how beefy they are. Now, I'm going to overlay some pans now of what the 5E FHE rods look like compared to the 4E FTE rods. It is night and day. These are ridiculously thick, and I reckon it could push like 300 horsepower on these rods. It reminds me of an early 2JZ engine, which, you know, it has ridiculously overbuilt rods for the amount of power that it was running. I think Toyota had the same mentality when making this. So after all of that bad luck, we might actually be in for an engine which is way more powerful than any engine that we could have imagined while using the 4E FTE.
So with the revelation that our 5E engine has the potential to be an absolute powerhouse, we could get on with installing the new sump. Now, when fitting one of these sumps, it's important to make sure that it's carefully lowered down onto the mating surface and that the bolts are tightened up in a cross pattern to the correct torque setting. So for our sump bolts, it was around 8 Newton meters.
No sign of water, but you quench my thirst.
So now that our modified sump has been fitted, we can now get on with the reassembly of this engine, and I started off by fitting the exhaust manifold and the turbo. When doing this, I had to make sure to connect up the turbo's oil feed and oil return lines.
Oh, that is such a nice oil return, isn't it? Josh, at the exhaust company, I don't like admitting this, but you are quite good sometimes. Beautiful.
So that is now the exhaust side of our engine completely done, and now I can move on to the inlet side and fit the inlet manifold. Once that was bolted down, it was then time to fit the injectors. And after I had fitted those, it was on with the thermostat housing. So once the thermostat housing was bolted down, all that was left to do was to connect up all of the coolant lines.
They're both on.
Our engine is looking more and more complete the further we get on with it. I am so proud of this. We still have a few jobs left to do. We've got to get our cam cover on. We also have to do our gearbox and clutch, but obviously we're going to have to wait until this is off the engine stand to do that. But there is one big job we still have to do, and that is the timing again for the second time in this video. So let's get started.
So doing the timing on the 5E was actually a lot easier and quicker than when I tried it on the 4E, and that's because I learned from that first time how exactly these engines time up. Now there is one slight difference between the 4E and the 5E, and it's actually to do with the belt that you've got to use. Because the 5E is 1.5 litres rather than 1.3, the block is actually a tiny bit longer than the 4Es, meaning you have to use a slightly longer belt to time it up. So after finishing up with the timing, I could quickly reassemble all of the belt covers and the crank pulley before moving on to the final job that I could do on the engine stand, which was fitting the cam cover. Now, alongside replacing all 4 of these sort of spark plug O-rings that sit in the cam cover, I also made sure to use a brand new rubber gasket for the main outside seal, and with this I could apply a little bit of RTV sealant on that rubber gasket just to double make sure that when we do fit this, it doesn't have any oil leaks. But once that was done, I could then get the cam cover installed.
So that is all of the jobs that we can do now with this engine still on the stand. So we can now go ahead and get this on a pallet. Now we need to fit our clutch and our pressure plate. Now the reason why this isn't a brand new one is because we have a really cool, potentially maybe stage 3 clutch coming later on with a really cool gearbox with maybe an LSD, and it just can't come for this video. So we are going to have to get this in and get this in the car for the sake of this video and getting the car started, but just rest assured later on some cool stuff will be coming.
So to get our oiled clutch installed, I could use the clutch alignment tool, and then I could bolt it up and torque it to spec. And then it was on with the gearbox. And now that's on, there is only one more job to do, and that's to install all of our ancillaries. So that's our alternator, our power steering pump, our AC pump, and then both of the auxiliary belts.
So, ladies and gentlemen, here we have it. Our engine is fully built up. I'm going to call this the 5E FTE, the Frankenstein engine, because it has bits of 3 engines on it. But now, all we need to do, in theory, is get this engine mounted in the engine bay, connect everything up to it, and just cross our fingers and hope this thing starts.
So this is where we find out whether all of the hard work has been worth it. Is it possible for someone like me with absolutely no mechanical qualifications to completely tear down an engine, rebuild it, and have it actually work in the end? I suppose we will find out soon enough. But firstly, after we've got the engine mounted up in the engine bay, we have the mammoth task of connecting absolutely everything up. That's all of our plugs on the wiring loom, our fuel lines, coolant pipes, and absolutely everything else. And to be honest, it can seem quite overwhelming having so many things to think about connecting up once the engine's in, but as I've said in previous videos, just mentally compartmentalizing and breaking everything down into lots of little jobs is the best way I've found of getting it done. So getting everything back together was all going well until I tried to fit the exhaust.
Okay, so we have ran into another tiny problem. It's not massive, but it is a bit annoying. As you can see, this exhaust is actually contacting the sump just there, and it's also dangerously close to our drive shaft. And the reason why this is now happening when it didn't happen with the 4E FTE is because, if you remember earlier in the video, I mentioned that the 5E block is actually a little bit longer than the 4E block, and this exhaust was obviously made when we had the 4E in the car. So because of that, the sump is sat 10 millimeters further down, and as is sort of the gearbox and everything, so it is now contacting a load of stuff where it didn't earlier when we had the 4E block in, if that makes sense. So it's a bit of a problem. We're going to have to run the first start with just a downpipe, so it's going to be nice and loud. But yeah, we can't use this exhaust, unfortunately.
So whilst a little bit annoying, it is not the end of the world. We can go and get another custom exhaust made in a future video. But for now, there are still a few more jobs we need to get on with before we can get this car started.
We are very nearly there now. The Sera is looking very back together. There are still a few things we need to fit, and one of those things I've been looking forward to install, and it is this. It is a little baby intercooler, and this, unlike traditional intercoolers that sit on the front, actually sits on the top, and we're going to install it now. So it literally just plonks on a bit of boost piping, and that goes in there like that. Right, so there we have it. Our top mount intercooler is on. I just think these look so cool. Doesn't that look amazing? I absolutely love top mount intercoolers. Now, to make this work and be functional, we are of course going to have to give the Sera a bonnet scoop. And also on top of that, I have also discovered that the bonnet just doesn't close with that on. So not only are we going to need a bonnet scoop, we're going to need to make some clearance there somehow. But that is a job for a future video. I think for the sake of today, we're just going to run with no bonnet. But there are still a few little bits left to do. So let's get on with that and then see if it will start. 3, 2, 1.
So the final thing to get on with was to actually extend a bit of wiring for the air temperature sensor. Now, a massive thank you goes to Evolution Autoworks for helping me out with pinning our new plug, but other than that, all I had to do was join the wires together using some heat shrink and wrap the wires up in some tape, and then it was finished.
Boom. That is professional work, I have to say. Pretty happy with that. Oh, satisfaction. Right, let's see if this thing starts. So, what I've done is I have unplugged our coil packs, our distributor, as you can see, and that is going to allow us to hopefully crank over the engine without any spark, meaning we won't fire up. But because we've completely emptied this engine of oil, I want to just turn it over to just get all the oil circulating, basically. So let's do that first, and then we can try start it. Oh, I don't like this bit. I really don't like this bit. This just gets me so nervous, mate, honestly. The amount of work we've put into this. Okay, all right. I've got to stop being a wuss. Okay, that is good news. It's cranking.
So after that confirmation that the engine did indeed turn over, it was then time to be brave, reconnect our distributor, and go for the first start.
Okay, right, Jav, do you want to give me a countdown?
Let's do it. Right, ready? In 3, 2, 1.
On the button? No way! Do you see how quickly that fired up?
Mate, that was so good.
Oh my god! Yes! Mate, that is idling beautifully. Mate, that is literally idling.
That sounds amazing.
Do you remember last time it sounded awful, horrible. Mate, I am so happy. Oh, lots of smoke. We've got lots of smoke.
We do have lots of smoke.
We've got lots of smoke, but oh my lord, that thing idled so well.
That sounded nice. Thank God.
We've got to figure out where the smoke's coming from, but wow, for a first start, that was so good. I am actually so pleased, mate. Wait, we are putting a shift there. Ladies and gentlemen, if that doesn't prove that persistence is key, if that doesn't prove that hard work can overcome 3 catastrophic obstacles, we're a bit smoky, and we have been at this video for weeks now, but honestly, I'm feeling over the moon with that. This is one of the rarest Toyotas in the world. It has doors that go up, this massive glass boot, and recently we fit this Frankenstein engine which should allow us to make over 250 horsepower. We did this in the hopes of building a performance version of this car that Toyota never actually made. So today the plan is to install thousands of pounds worth of handling upgrades to make sure this car can manage this new power. So there are many ways you can improve a car's handling, but old Japanese cars like the Sera have one big thing which lets them down, which is the squishiest suspension on planet Earth. And this basically means that when you go through a corner, it rolls over onto one side, the inside tyres lose grip, and it also makes it way less responsive. So there is one big way we can improve on that, and it is with a set of coilovers.
If you do one favor, just stay with me.
For some reason, whenever I get a new set of coilovers, I just feel like a kid on Christmas. They just look absolutely beautiful, don't they? Massive thanks goes to BC for sending these out. They're going to make the Sera handle like it's on rails, and it's going to lower it down as well, so we're going to be looking cool too. And it's going to lower our centre of gravity now I'm thinking of it, so we get extra bonus handling points as well. So let's get these fitted. So first things first, our little friend is needed, because these bolts have been on here for 30 years or something. So first thing we're going to undo is this little brake line. There we are. 3, 2, 1. Oh my God. Nope. Nope, that is not coming. It's just the best way of undoing bolts. Can't reach. Got it. There we go. That is one old Sera shock. That's been on there for 34 years.
Holy.
That's crazy.
So after taking out the old shocks, I could crack on with installing the new coilovers. Now, not only do these coilovers lower the centre of gravity of the car by lowering the ride height, but they'll also reduce the body roll that I mentioned earlier because the springs on the coilovers are more stiff. And what's great about these BCs is that you can actually adjust a load of different settings on the coilover itself. So that's stuff like the ride height and also the dampening. So it just allows you to have a lot more control on how you want your coilovers to feel.
So just like that, that is our coilover installed, and it is looking great. You can also see on here we have 3 collars that basically allow us all of our adjustment in the coilovers, and BC actually supply us with these spanners so we can adjust it manually. But I don't want to do it yet because there might be a modification coming later which would affect how much adjustment we need. So I'm going to wait until later, but for now it already looks like it's going to be pretty low. Let's get the other side on. So now we can move on to installing the rears, and this should be the same process except for the fact this has 2 top mount bolts or nuts to do up, and it only has 1 bolt going through the bottom rather than 2, so it's pretty much the same. But there is one important step that we have to do with the rears that we don't have to do with the fronts, and I'm going to go on to that later. It's another part that we've got to fit, but for now let's get this on.
So our first step was to remove both of the rear wheels and then also to disconnect both of the shocks from the rear beam.
Something we have just realised is that when we do fit these, the dampening, which is controlled here at the top mount, we aren't going to be able to change unless we want to remove the whole interior. So we've gone straight down the middle, 50-50 soft and hard. So hopefully we don't change our minds. But let's get this in. Okay, so the thing I was referring to earlier that we need to do to make sure we lower this rear properly is actually to do with this panhard bar, is what it's called. And it basically provides stability to the rear axle, and it also is responsible for sort of aligning the rear axle as well. And once we lower this, our rear axle is going to go out of line. So what we need to do is we need an adjustable panhard bar, and I think we need to shorten it to realign the rear axle. And I have bought one right here. It is a white line panhard bar, and as you can see from the end, it has a nut and it's got threads, meaning it is adjustable. It can be lengthened and shortened if we need to. So I could go ahead and get our new panhard bar installed, and to do this, I firstly had to remove the old one.
Should just pull off, I'm assuming.
There we go. There we have it. That is our old panhard bar.
So now the old panhard bar was out, I could go ahead and get our new white line one fitted, and this was pretty quick because there are only 2 bolts that hold it in. Once that panhard bar was fitted, I could go ahead and connect up the bottom of the coilovers to the rear beam to finish everything up.
I bet you've never used a hammer to hit a hammer.
Oh, I'll do.
That is going to be so low. The rear beam is more up, like the fuel tank is lower than the rear beam.
This is not right.
Look, it's literally, the fuel tank is literally lower than the rear beam. That's crazy. That's crazy. This car's going to be slammed. We've still got to get the interior back together, but once we've done that, we'll get the wheels back on and we'll find out just how low this car is.
Loving you makes the stars shine brighter. Yeah. One step closer to the halo. Yeah. We are what we yes, we rule around.
Okay, so that is now everything on the interior back together, and the coilovers are fitted, our new panhard bar is fitted. So now all that's left to do is fit our wheels, get the car down and see how low it is. But we aren't going to be putting on the old wheels. These are the wheels we're going for.
Yeah, when I blow up, I'ma soar high like Peter Pan. In real life, be living out my dreams. If I'm waking up, it's in a foreign land.
These are a set of Speedline Safaris, and aren't they absolutely beautiful? I just love these wheels so much. And on top of them being very nice, I think they'll work really well with the theme of the project that we're going for. These actually came standard on the Toyota Starlet SRs, which was sort of a more sporty version of the Starlet. So it's really going to work with our Sera because we are trying to make the performance version of the Sera that Toyota never made. So I think they're quite fitting. Also, these wheels have been completely refurbished and repainted, so they're in great condition. And we also have some brand new rubber on here. These are a set of Toyo Prox's TR1 tyres, and they're going to help us grip in the corners, help us out with our handling, because they're a more sporty tyre and they're also brand new. So let's get them fitted. Oh, that looks sick. Look how sick that is. Oh, they are very cool, aren't they? These are a good choice. These are a very good choice. The thing is with wheels, you never know if they're going to be a good choice until you fit them. They were a good choice. Oh, mate, they look so good, don't they? They look so good. Right, down she comes. It is going to be low. It's already low without it even being on the floor. She's slammed. Oh, wow, that is low. Okay, I know there's going to be some of you in the comments that are going to be like, lower it even more, there's a wheel arch gap. That is perfect for me because, again, this car will be my daily. We want to use it on road trips. It wants to be used. If it's any lower than that, it will probably rub and yeah, it won't be practical. But look, just stand back from the car and just look at how low it is. Like, the top of it is like at my waist. It is absolutely slammed. I want to get outside and have a look at it outside. The next mod we've got for the Sera is this. This is a white line anti-roll bar, and we actually already have a roll bar on the car, and it is this guy here. But if you take a look, this one is a lot thicker, meaning it's going to reduce the body roll even more than the one that's already on the car, and it's just going to help the car feel more pointy, more direct. It's going to stop the car sort of leaning in the corners, so it's a really good handling upgrade. Let's get it on. There we are. There we go. So now these are on the floor, you can see just how much beefier our white line roll bar is compared to our standard one. So it is definitely going to make a big improvement. Let's get it on.
Now, before actually getting the new roll bar fitted, I firstly wanted to refurbish the brackets that hold the bushes into place, as they were looking pretty rusty. So I went over the first one with a wire brush, some brake cleaner, and then I finished it off with some black paint, which, as you can see from this difference, has made it look a load better. I could then crack on with doing that again on the other bracket, and once that was done for both of them, I could then get the anti-roll bar installed.
That's a job well done, I think. Oh, I really like that mod. I think it looks so good. And that's so much more beefy, isn't it? It makes it just look newer under here already. Next up we have this, a strut brace. Now, if you remember on the Fox build, the Fox GTI, we installed a strut brace on that car, and it's a really nice, cheap, easy to fit mod you can do. And essentially the way it works is it will sit on our top mount of our struts like that, and it will basically increase our chassis rigidity, which again just helps the handling feel. So yeah, it's a really easy install. Let's get it on.
Now, I'm not the biggest fan of the colour of this strut brace, but it will definitely help us improve our handling, and I can always get it painted later down the line.
The next thing that desperately needs improving on our Sera is the brakes. As you can see, they are absolutely tiny, and those are definitely not going to cut the mustard when this thing is like 270 horsepower. So we need a nice big brake kit to improve on our stopping power, and that's exactly what I've bought. We firstly have our party piece, the big brake calipers. Now, these have actually come off a Toyota Sera, and they have a much bigger caliper piston than our standard Sera brakes, so these should give us much better stopping power. And on top of that, they've actually been painted in this beautiful gloss black. They literally look brand new, and that was done by the guys down at 360 Alloys, the absolute boys if you need any wheel refurbishments, caliper refurbs, or any bodywork. So I will leave a link to them in the description of this video. But on top of that, we also have our EBC yellow stuff brake pads. These are just a really good compound for road and track use. They're always a safe bet, I think. And we also have, finally, our new brake discs. Now, granted, these don't look like brand new discs, and that's because they aren't, they're second hand, but these actually needed to get custom made to work with this brake setup on the Sera, and the guy I bought them off did all the hard work, and they are actually in okay condition. Once we get them used, they will come up all nice and shiny again. So yeah, those are our brake discs. Let's get it all fitted. First thing we've got to do is remove our standard caliper. That's one caliper out. There we have our pads and our caliper carrier. Okay, so that is our standard Sera caliper, and as you can see, the piston in the Sera one is much bigger, so
big upgrades.
Now, before getting the new brakes fitted, I firstly had to make some adjustments with the angle grinder to the brake dust cover, because our new brake disc is a much wider diameter than the standard ones. So once I had smoothed down the metal with the flap disc, I could then go over it with some black paint just to protect it from rust. And the next step was to install the brakes just like normal. I did have to apply lubricant to the caliper pins and the brake pads before the installation, but as for the installation itself, it is exactly the same process as fitting any other set of brakes, and that is because these Celica GT4 brake calipers are a bolt-on fit to the Toyota Sera.
Oh, damn, they look sick. They look so sick.
I could then go ahead and do the exact same process again on the other side. Also, just a quick reminder to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already, because it massively helps me bring you even more videos just like this.
Okay, so now that's done, the front brakes are installed, we can move on to what we're going to do with the rears. Now on the Sera, it actually has drum brakes on the rears, which isn't ideal. They are very bad at dissipating the heat, they're bad for performance, and on top of that, they don't look great either. So this is what we bought to fix it. So here we have our rear brake solution for the Sera. This is a caliper conversion, and all of these parts were ridiculously hard to get hold of. It was like gathering together the Infinity Stones. We firstly have our rear brake calipers. These are really tiny little calipers, and they came off the Toyota Glanza. Very cool. We also have the caliper carriers that go with them, and also our really important tiny little retaining clips that hold the brake pad into the caliper carrier. So those are really important. And speaking of brake pads, we've got those as well. These are our EBC brake pads. Again, they're really tiny, and I tried to find some yellow stuff pads to match our fronts. Couldn't find them for these brakes, so we just went with some normal ones. We also have these, again, ridiculously rare. I had to find a whole Glanza rear beam just to buy these, and these are the ears, as I call them, but they're actually just the mounting brackets for the caliper carrier, or sit something like that. So yeah, we need those to get the calipers actually mounted up. And finally, we have our brake discs, which you might notice don't look like normal brake discs because they've got this, and basically they've got the whole bearing built into these brake discs. Very strange. I've never done it like that before, but apparently it's a very old school way of doing it. And to match for those, we also have our little bearings as well. Those are our wheel bearings, which are, again, very different to what I'm used to. And apparently they just sit in like that with some grease, and that's your bearing. So very strange. So yes, there is all of our stuff for the rear on the Sera. Let's get it all fitted. So now we can see this nut which sits behind that split pin and cap we just took off. And this nut should be nice and loose, actually. It shouldn't be tight. Yeah, really loose. And the reason why this nut needs to be loose is because the looseness of the nut sort of affects the freeness of the bearings. As you can see, that's really nice and free, spinning really easily. But if I tighten it up, like so, and I really tighten it up, now the bearing is barely moving. So we sort of want to make sure that that nut is not too loose and not too tight. So it's like the Goldilocks nut in essence. So that's something we've got to keep in mind when we fit our discs. But for now, let's take this drum off. There we go.
So the first thing we want to get on is our caliper carrier mounting bracket. Next we have to get a load of this grease, and then we have to really just like work the crease into the bearing.
After that, the bearing can be placed into the bearing assembly, and then there's also this sort of end cap which needs to be fitted on. And to do this, we used a mallet and a socket, and you just sort of have to press it into place.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, so now we'll get our grease. Just put a little bit on here.
Next, we can get the whole brake disc fitted onto the hub. And now it's time to install the front bearing, which is the smaller of the two bearings. And again, I've got to get grease all over it before I can fit it into place.
Get him in.
There's also a washer to install.
Now that's done, we can get on our nuts.
And remember, this is our Goldilocks nut. We don't want it to be too tight or too loose.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. There probably is like a special torque setting you're supposed to use, but I think that'll be fine.
So to get the bearing finished, I could install the split pin and then the bearing cover.
And that is done. Well, obviously not the brakes, but that's our bearing and brake disc done, which is looking loads better. And that is probably the easiest method of doing a bearing ever. So yeah, now we can get on the brake calipers.
So doing this now is actually nice and easy. We have the caliper carrier bracket already installed on, so it is just like fitting any old set of brakes.
I wanna see you on the coast now.
Now we can get our caliper in. Our new brakes look absolutely fantastic. I am in love with these, especially with the gloss black calipers that match the front. It looks so, so good. And when we put our wheels on, it's gonna look even better. But just picture how good these look, how amazing that is. And if we go around to our drum brakes, it is just so much worse. I mean, that is ugly as hell. So I am glad we are upgrading these. So yeah, with all of that said, let's get cracking. Crack-a-lacky, let's not do that. Let's get cracking with getting this one done. Oh, it's a bit smoky, fire in the booth, whoa, whoa, whoa.
My thoughts make me tired, just running through my mind. Wonder if there's peace that I could find.
Since both of the rear brakes have been installed, we can now focus on fitting our handbrake cables. But unfortunately, we can't just use the old cables that work with the drum brakes. We need cables that work with the new rear calipers. So these cables have also come off a Toyota Glanza. So the first step to getting our new cables in is to actually remove some of the exhaust heat shielding, and then that will allow us to fully remove the old cables.
There we are. There are our handbrake cables. Now we should disconnect them from up here and pull him up like that. Push him up. There we are. There we have both of our old handbrake cables. I think we need to transfer over the mounting bracket things. Yeah, that'll do. These are very rusted. Oh dear. I'll probably give these two a clean up before we put them on. In hindsight, we could give them all a clean up before we put them on.
So that is exactly what I did. Now, even though no one's going to see these mounting brackets for the handbrake cable, I think it's just worth giving them a good clean up with the wire wheel and also some black paint, not only to make it look better, but also to make sure it doesn't rust more in the future. And considering these mounting brackets were really rusty beforehand, after spending a bit of time and effort on them, I think they turned out great. So now that's done, we can get the mounting brackets fitted onto the new handbrake cables, and then get the new handbrake cables fitted.
Perfect. That looks mint. That looks mint.
The last thing to do on this side was to connect up the cable to the caliper itself, and once that was finished, I could go and do the exact same process again on the other side.
But look at how nice our painted bracket is, man. Lovely new handbrake cable. Oh,
Me gusta. Is that how they say it in Spanish?
That is how they say it in Spanish.
Give us the accent.
Me gusta.
Me gusta. Me gusta. Okay, so that is our handbrake completely done. And as you can see, our handbrake is off and the wheel can rotate, which is good. But now, if I put the handbrake up, yeah, that ain't going anywhere. So that's a job well done. Now, that is pretty much all of our brake system done, but there is one key thing I have not installed onto any of the brake calipers yet, and that is our brake lines. And the reason why I've not done that yet is because we've got some new ones. These are braided brake lines, and they are going to massively improve our braking performance. Essentially, when your brakes get hot, the pedal feel can actually get a bit spongy with the standard rubber brake lines that are on pretty much every single car. So not only do these look a load better, they're going to help with our brake responsiveness and also just the brake pedal feel when our brakes get hot. So let's get them on. Changing over a set of brake lines is really simple in theory, but in practice, when you're dealing with a lot of corrosion, they can be an absolute pain. And that's what I was experiencing when doing this job. For something that shouldn't have taken any longer than an hour all round to do, doing these brake lines literally took me half a day just because of how corroded they were. But after a fair bit of persistence and also a bit of explicit language, I did finally manage to get all these brake lines fitted. So there we have it. Our braided brake lines are now installed and they're looking amazing, but more than looking amazing, they're going to make our brake pedal feel absolutely sensational in comparison to the rubber lines. Now, what I really want to do is go and put the wheels back on and take the car out for a drive with all of its new handling upgrades, but unfortunately we can't do that because for the same reason as in the previous video, we can't take this for a drive because the car hasn't been mapped yet. So for now, all we can do is install the final modification that I've got for this video, and it's not really a handling upgrade, it's more just to make the car look really cool. So let me show you. We have got a new bonnet for the Sera, but not just any old bonnet. This is a Glanzer replica bonnet made specifically for the Sera, and as you can see, it has a beautiful bonnet scoop which exactly matches the bonnet scoop that you'll find on the Toyota Glanzers, which I think is very cool and definitely works with our goal of making a performance version of this car as if it came out of the factory. There we have it. Our Sera now has a beautiful new bonnet, which unfortunately doesn't actually have a bonnet latch. So there's no way of securing it down at the minute. We are going to have to think of a solution for that. But once it is color matched with the blue, I think that bonnet will be a great addition to the car and it looks really cool. So, okay, so we want to make the Toyota Sera as fast as we can possibly make it. But also, by the end of this video, I just want to get the car driving with all of that extra power because we actually haven't driven it yet with all of the mods that we've done to this car so far. Now, like a lot of the stuff we do on this channel, we're going to have to take one step back before taking 2 steps forward. So we do have to remove the engine. So if you've been watching the build on the Sera, you'll know that we've pulled this engine out and reinstalled it more times than I can count, but I'm hoping that this is the last time that we have to do it. Now, there are various things that you've got to undo and parts that have to be taken out, but once all of that is done, we can put a pallet underneath the engine, unbolt the engine mounts, and then lift the car over the engine. Also, just a quick reminder that if you do enjoy these videos, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, so that is the engine removed, and now that is done, we can move on to installing all of the modifications onto it, and the first mod I have bought is quite possibly the most expensive mod I have bought for any of the builds that I've ever done, and it is this thing right here, which is a Toyota Glanzer limited slip differential gearbox. Now, before I tell you about this, a massive thanks goes to Dan at DJR Imports for selling me this. It is quite possibly the rarest item of all of the things I've got on this car, which is already quite a lot of rare parts. This is so unbelievably rare and hard to find because it is the stronger Glanzer gearbox, meaning we'll be able to hold more power, but it also has a limited slip differential from Quaife, meaning we're going to be able to put the power down even better. It's going to help the car handle loads better. It is just a huge upgrade and it's going to be game changing for how the Sera drives. But alongside this, we also have a stage 3 clutch, which is just sort of a necessary mod. We're going to be shooting for 250, 260, maybe 270 horsepower, and we needed an upgraded clutch to manage all of that power. So yeah, let's get it all fitted. So to get our new gearbox and clutch installed, the first task is of course to remove the old gearbox, which is relatively easy. There's just a few 17 and 14mm bolts. There we go.
I could then remove our old clutch, and once that was done, I could then attempt to get the new stage 3 clutch fitted, but that is when I noticed our first issue.
Okay, so some not so good news. This is not the right clutch for our flywheel. I may have bought the wrong one. It just doesn't fit. Like, you can see that that hole there is not in line with the hole there, and it's all wrong basically. I think this is almost a different diameter clutch. It is just completely wrong, long story short. So that means we can't get the new gearbox on, so we're gonna have to get on with potentially the next upgrade that we've got for the engine now, whilst I order a new clutch.
And that next upgrade is these injectors, which alongside being bright yellow, can actually inject a lot more fuel into the cylinders over our standard injectors.
Something about them being bright yellow, which just makes me think they're more powerful. Right, we can pop these off.
Now, because we will be adding more boost to our engine, or in other words, forcing more air into the cylinders later on in the video, to make more power, we also need to make sure that we can inject more fuel into the cylinders. This is because more fuel plus more air equals a bigger bang, and a bigger bang means more power. These injectors are just a piece of the puzzle to make that bigger combustion in our cylinders to make our Toyota Sera go even faster.
So as you can see, our beautiful new injectors have now been fitted, and now we can move on to the next thing we need to do with our fuel system, and it is actually to install this, which is a fuel pressure regulator, or an adjustable fuel pressure regulator. Now, to explain what this is, I have consulted Google, and it says it is to maintain a consistent fuel pressure across the fuel injectors, ensuring the engine receives the correct amount of fuel for optimal performance. So that's basically what one does, but because this one is adjustable, when we take this for mapping, it will allow the mappers to sort of get the right amount of fuel pressure along the fuel valve, and they can adjust it using this little screw there. So that's sort of what it does. We can now get it on. Okay, first we will remove this.
So to get our new fuel pressure regulator installed, the first step is to remove the metal fuel return pipe.
So that is our standard fuel return line with our standard fuel pressure regulator, and that one isn't adjustable, which is obviously why we are changing it. Okay, so we've also got this little sort of what would you call this?
Plate with the connection thing.
So we've got this plate with the connection thing, which we're going to put on the end of our fuel line, just like that.
So after getting the plate with the connection thing fitted onto the end of the fuel rail, I could then work on getting the fuel pressure regulator mounted onto the side of the engine. Once that was done, the next job was to connect the fuel feed line up to the fuel pressure regulator alongside a vacuum line which comes from the inlet manifold. So the final upgrade that we need to do to our fuel system is to install this Cytec fuel pump. And to do this, we actually need to go into the Sera and take apart some of the interior, and after doing that, it will give us access to the top of the fuel tank where we can remove the standard fuel pump. Now, an upgraded fuel pump is vital for making more power. As I mentioned earlier, we need to ensure that enough fuel can get into the cylinders of the engine to make a bigger combustion. And whilst we've already sorted out our injectors, we need to make sure that enough fuel can get from the fuel tank to those new injectors. And since we're going for a lot more power, we will be demanding a lot more from the fuel pump, and the standard one in the Sera just won't cut it, which is why we need this new Cytec one.
There we go. That is one fuel pump. That is massive. Look at the size of it.
So now the standard fuel pump assembly is out, I can crack on with swapping over the fuel pump. Now, since the Cytec fuel pump comes with its own wiring to make it work, I have to connect the new fuel pump wires with the standard fuel pump wires, and to do this, I'm using heat shrink connectors that have solder inside of them that melts when you put some heat on it, and this is one of the safest ways to do so.
Okay, so I think I've come up with a solution for our clutch not fitting problem. Basically, there are two solutions. Either I could get a new clutch to fit onto this flywheel, or I could get a lovely new flywheel to replace this that works with our lovely stage 3 clutch. And that's what I decided to go with. And I bought this absolute work of art. This is a lightened flywheel, a proper race car competition spec flywheel, and this is going to allow us to rev up even faster, and it's going to reduce our drivetrain losses ever so slightly as well, which will result in a little bit more horsepower. So With that said, this is going to make the car drive way better. Let's get it fitted.
So to get our new flywheel installed, I've firstly got to remove the old one, and there's just 6 bolts that I've got to undo.
We have a scale, so we can see just how much lighter our new flywheel is. Let's put him on. 7.9 kilograms. Okay, 7.9 for the old flywheel. What do you reckon the new one's going to be, Jav?
I'm going to guess 3.8.
3.8. I'm going to go with 3 on the dot. No way have you got... Wait, hang on. We need to read. The people are going to think we've just faked that. Hang on. That is actually mad. 3.8.
So with the confirmation that our new flywheel was half the weight of our old flywheel, we could then get it fitted.
We'll be talking.
And of course, when doing this, we had to make sure to torque the bolts up to spec. Once that was done, the next job was to check if our stage 3 clutch would fit onto this new flywheel, and sure enough it did, which was a massive relief.
Job done. We can now get on our gearbox.
But before doing that, I firstly wanted to swap out the old clutch release bearing for our new one. And once that was in and fitted, I could then get the new gearbox onto the engine.
Okay, so that is our Toyota Glanza gearbox fitted with our Quaife limited slip differential, with our light and flywheel in there, with our stage 3 clutch, which is going to be an amazing thing to drive when it is all working. But now we can move on to the next modification, which is everyone's favourite, a new turbo. Well, here is our new turbo setup, and I am so excited to get this fitted. We have, firstly, a big turbo, and for the size of this engine, that is a big turbo. It is a TD04 turbo, and it's a hybrid as well, so it's been made more efficient. We're going to be able to spool up faster and make more power. We have this gorgeous tubular manifold, which is absolutely massive. That again is going to help with the flow of the exhaust gases as they come out of the engine. And we also have a big fat downpipe. We've got a screamer pipe as well, which is going to sound amazing, an external Turbo Smart wastegate, and a new oil feed line. We also have an oil return line on the way. So yeah, in terms of getting it fitted, we're actually going to install the engine back into the car first and then get this all on, because I don't think we'll actually be able to fit the engine through the bottom because this is just so big. So we're going to get the engine mounted up first and then get this all on.
So before we could get the engine mounted up, the first thing to do was to remove the old turbo and exhaust manifold, and whilst doing that I could also fit our new oil feed line. The next thing to do, of course, was to get our engine mounted up into the engine bay. And to do this, we could use a technique which we have used plenty of times on the channel before, and that's to lower the car over the engine.
Okay, so that is the engine in now for hopefully the final time. But now that's done, we can go ahead and get our turbo setup fit on there. But before we do so, I do just want to quickly show you how much bigger the new turbo setup is compared to the old turbo setup. This one is just going to make so much better noise. It's going to give us way more power. It's just going to be loads better. So let's get it on. There we go.
So after installing the new exhaust manifold and turbo, I could then get the oil feed line connected up, followed by the external wastegate and also the screamer pipe.
That actually looks so good. I am gassed with that. Oh, this is gonna be the sickest car ever. Look how cool that is. Wastegate, screamer pipe, turbo. This is so cool, man.
So now that our new insane turbo setup is fitted, I can move on to just connecting everything back up in the engine bay. That includes everything from our throttle cable to our wiring loom, to our clutch line, to our drive shafts, and absolutely everything else this car needs to make it run.
Okay, now because this is a limited slip differential gearbox, we've got to use this Hypoid special 75 W90 gearbox oil. So don't really know why, to be honest, but we just got to use it. Oh, there we are. She's full. Yeah, we're gonna have to let her drain out for a little bit, but...
Okay, so that is the vast majority of the stuff reconnected back up, and the car is looking far more complete. But there is one big thing missing at the front of the engine bay, and that is our radiator. Now, our new exhaust manifold is absolutely lovely, but it has a problem. Our radiator will no longer fit. So, we have come up with a solution, and it is this little radiator. It's actually quite thick. This is a Civic half radiator, and it's aluminium and beautiful, and it is now going to sit in here like this, out of the way of our manifold. But there is a slight issue. As you can see, it is sitting quite high in the engine bay, so we're going to have to do a little bit of fabrication with the stock mounts at the bottom here. And we're just going to have to do quite a lot of fabrication overall with the exhaust. We need a brand new exhaust to be made. We need new boost pipes. We need to make a custom intercooler. There's so much stuff that we need to make. So you all know where we're going to go next, and that is the exhaust company. So we are now here at the exhaust company, and we have got a lot to get on with. So I have bought a whiteboard to write everything down. So let's go through it. Number one, a full custom exhaust. We're going to have to do a few modifications to the downpipe and weld a full exhaust from the downpipe all the way back. Number two, custom intercooler. We're going to have to make a custom intercooler. Number three, custom boost pipes as well. Number four, we're going to have to do a slight modification to the oil return pipe, because on the bottom of the turbo, as you can see, the oil return pipe doesn't go into our rubber oil return line. So we need to make a custom metal oil return pipe so it goes into the rubber pipe, if that makes sense. Number five, we need to do a custom radiator bracket so that we can mount our lovely radiator that's on the floor, and we can mount it in, as we mentioned in the previous clip, the radiator sits too high, so we need to do that as well. So we have got a lot to do here, but I think the first thing we're going to start with is the exhaust. Okay, so the first port of call is to make our exhaust, and we just need to build a full custom stainless exhaust from here. We need to go all the way through, past our anti-roll bar, around, through the heat shielding. We need to wiggle around here, over the top of our rear beam, and then it needs to come out of here. And we're gonna have a big sort of single exit Jap style exhaust tip is what I'm thinking we're going to go for. It's going to look amazing. Let's get started.
So for those of you who regularly watch my channel, you'll know exactly how a custom exhaust is made here at the exhaust company. They start off with a load of measuring and planning, and then they'll gradually build the exhaust up using TIG welding with stainless steel piping to make the most beautiful exhausts in the game. Not to mention, they sound absolutely epic when they're done as well. So whilst Josh was cracking on with that and building our new exhaust, Lav could focus on fabricating our new radiator brackets. Now, Lav's plan to securely mount our radiator involves creating 2 bottom mounts and a single top mount. And all of this will be fabricated using sheet metal, and then it will be welded onto the car. And whilst Lav was making really good progress with the radiator mounts, Josh was absolutely smashing out the exhaust. Once Lav was finished with creating the bottom radiator mounts, he could then weld them on. Then Lav could crack on with building the top radiator mount. Now, rather than welding this, Lav opted to drill a hole and install something called a riv nut, which will allow us to bolt this top mount together.
Okay, so the radiator is in. We've got a new top mount up here, as you can see, which has been bolted in. And then, as for our lower mounts, those have been welded and sort of fabricated into place to work with this radiator. And now that's done, the radiator is absolutely solid. And it's also low enough down so that the bonnet can close as well.
So Josh was now onto the rear section of the exhaust, and as you can see, he is now making the rear silencer. And to weld onto this rear silencer, Josh is making an awesome exhaust tip. What he's doing here is using a 4-inch piece of pipe and a blowtorch to make a really cool blue to gold to silver effect for our exhaust tip, which I just think looks absolutely amazing. There were then still some final bits of welding to complete. And then the exhaust was done.
Ouch. That's hot. That is really hot. There we go. I fully burnt my thumb off. Lovely. Extra professional. My poor thumb. Do I get a job? Am I employed?
So now that we've finished our radiator brackets and our exhaust, we can now move on to the quickest job of the list, and that's to do our oil return pipe modification. And after a bit of TIG welding and magic, Lav could fit on the new modified pipe, and as you can see, it connects up to our rubber pipe perfectly, which is another job ticked off the list.
Okay, so that is our exhaust done. That's our radiator mounted in properly, and also that's our oil return done. So that's 3 out of the 4 jobs that we needed to do, all completed. And the final thing is to get our lovely new front mount intercooler installed. Now, it has got a bit of tape and some mounts on it because the guys here have already started with fabricating it all up and getting this installed, but it's going to sit sort of at the front like that, and then the job is to get boost pipes coming off here to the turbo there, boost pipe from there to turbo, and then this boost pipe needs to find its way all the way to the throttle body just up there. So that is the job. Let's go.
Now, earlier I mentioned that we would build a custom intercooler, but what actually ended up being far easier was to just buy a universal intercooler that was roughly the right size and then build custom boost pipes for it. Now, deciding where to route these boost pipes required a lot of planning and mocking up with the front bumper, but once they'd come up with that plan, they could then focus on mounting up the intercooler and building all of the custom boost pipes. And because these boost pipes are made of aluminium and not stainless steel, it's a bit of a different skill set to weld this, and it can be more difficult. But of course, the guys here at the exhaust company can weld aluminium no problem. There was a little bit more stainless steel welding involved in mounting up the intercooler. But once that was mounted up, the last thing to do was to get all of the boost pipes routed correctly.
Okay, so that is all of the work now finally complete here at the exhaust company. The lads have been very busy. Our exhaust is looking absolutely beautiful. We've got loads of beautiful TIG welding, our flexi, our sort of middle silencer, and then the exhaust comes all the way around to our rear silencer with a 4-inch Jap can style exhaust tip, which is just looking great. And our intercooler and all of our boost pipes are now done. Our boost pipes now come from our beautiful turbo just here. All the air will come through here, and then through our intercooler, which is obviously cooling down that turbocharged air, and then it comes around all the way up through to our throttle body. So that is now complete, done. We've done our radiator, that's mounted up. Our oil return has now been done as well. We are finished, and we can now go back to the unit because there are a few little jobs that we need to do before we can take this car for mapping. Okay, so there's only 2 more jobs that we need to do before we can get the Sera on a recovery truck and take it to the mappers. And the first one of those jobs is to wire in the radiator fan, because it currently isn't connected up to our loom. That will allow the fan to turn on when everything gets hot, which will allow the car to be cool when it's on idle. And also, we need to just put coolant in it and get all of that bled up as well. So this is the wiring which came off the old radiator which lived in the Sera, and that plug connects up to our wiring loom. And this is the wiring which came with our new radiator, and as you can see, it has a blue wire and a black wire, and also the standard wiring has a blue wire and a black wire. So I'm going to connect the blue up to the blue and the black up to the black, and then have it so this plug is basically connected to this rad fan, so we can plug it into our wiring loom, and then it should all work.
So to connect up these wires, my plan was to just crimp them, and to do this I could just cut the wires, strip them back, and then put the exposed ends of the wires into the connector and then crimp the wires together. Once that was done, I could then fit the radiator back into the car and connect up our new wiring to our wiring loom.
And hopefully that should work.
And then the final thing to do was to fill the cooling system up with coolant.
That is certified pouring skills right there.
Now, because I didn't have actual coolant, I just decided to go for water for now, but I'll make sure to change this later on.
Well, that is absolutely everything that we needed to do to the Sera to get it ready for mapping. I could have put the bonnet and the bumper and the wheel arch lining back on, but don't really have time for that because our transport is here. So we've got to get the Sera on the recovery truck. As you can see, it is night time, and then we're going to head over to the mappers in the morning and get this thing on the dyno. I am so excited. So we have now arrived here at SSA Performance, and these guys actually specialise in the engine which we've put in the Sera. So they really know what they're doing, and obviously I know what you all want to see, and it is this thing on the dyno, seeing how much power it can make. But before we can get it on the dyno, we actually have 2 jobs to do whilst we're here. And the first one of those jobs is to install something called a boost controller, which, if I show you, on the turbo is a little port there, and also these 2 ports on the wastegate. The boost controller will connect up to those, and also it will have some electrical wiring which will go into the cabin, connected to a gauge which tells us how much boost we have, and that will allow us to control the level of the boost of the turbo. So we need to do that, number 1. And number 2, we need to install something called a piggyback ECU, which is a lot of wiring, and that will allow us to change different sort of aspects of the engine, like the fuel injection, for example. And that will all allow us to map the car properly. So we've got to do those 2 things first, and then we can get started with the power runs.
So Reese from SSA Performance could begin installing the GFB boost controller. Now, one of the amazing things about this boost controller is that it will actually allow us to change the map of the car on demand. We'll be able to have a low boost map for running errands and going to the shops, and a high boost map for racing BMW M3s, which I just think is so cool. Once the boost controller was installed, Sean from SSA could then come and install the eManage Blue Piggyback ECU, which involves a fair bit of wire splicing. This piece of kit will allow Sean to control a couple of different aspects of the engine to make it run optimally with all of the modifications that we've added. After that, there were some final checks to do. We could fill up the car with Shell V-Power, and we could adjust the fuel pressure to 3 bar. Once all of that was done, the car was ready for the dyno. So this is it. The moment that all of the time, money and effort that we've spent on this car has been building up to. This project has absolutely tested my perseverance, and at times it has felt completely cursed. For those of you who have watched the whole series on this car, you'll know that this is the 3rd engine that we fitted, and that we've built this engine from the ground up, which is something that I've never done before. Now is the time to find out if it's all been worth it.
So that's all the jobs that we needed to do done. The Sera is on the dyno. We are now ready to do some power runs. So we are now getting ready for power run number 1.
So this first power run is just a safe lower boost run to check that the car is running right under load. And the boost level that we're going for this first run is 0.4 bar of boost.
Right, we're going.
So that first power run at 0.4 bar of boost is already 198 horsepower, which is absolutely insane. For reference, this is not even half of the boost that we're going for, so we are in for some strong numbers.
Time for our second power run. That sounds so good.
So after increasing the boost to 0.5 bar for power run number 2, the car was now producing 215 horsepower.
That's mad, isn't it?
That's really strong power.
Really strong. So half a bar, and what was it? 215. 215.
It's normally about half a bar. It's about 180 horsepower to the track. So yours 35 horsepower over average right now.
35. Wow. Wait, look at this.
So with us now feeling confident that the car was performing really well, we decided to turn the boost all the way up to 0.65 bar to see what the car would produce then. So with that 0.2 bar increase of boost, the car's horsepower jumped all the way up to 251 horsepower, which for an engine of this size is absolutely crazy.
So we've just come outside of the dyno room now, and the bottom line is that the engine is overperforming. We did several power runs and we gradually increased the boost from 0.4 bar all the way up to 0.65. And at 0.65, it made 251 horsepower, which is way more than they expected at that boost level for our engine, which is really good. They've said it's one of the best performing non-forged engines they've seen here, which is crazy to think that we built that and it's working well, because this car has felt cursed at times throughout this build. But we now have a choice. We can either stay safe at 251 at 0.65 bar, or we can push it even more. And I think I know what I'm going to do. I think we're going to turn it up even more. So let's get inside, do one more power run and see what it makes. Last one. Fingers crossed. Horsepower. That is incredible. This thing is going to be an absolute rocket. I reckon it'll be faster than the Fox. I reckon it will be. It's way lighter, and it has an unlimited slip dip as well.
And I wasn't joking, the Sera weighs just 930 kilograms, meaning that at 260 horsepower, it has a better power to weight ratio than an E46 and an E92 M3, and it's actually pretty close to the power to weight of a Lamborghini Urus.
I've been building this Toyota Sera, and in this video, I'm gonna get it driving.
Back in February, I purchased one of the rarest cars that Toyota ever built. It's called the Sera, and its most notable feature are these butterfly doors.
Now, this car never had a performance variant, so over the past few months, we've been on a mission to build that performance version that Toyota never made. We firstly built this whole new engine, which is capable of a lot more power.
We also installed several handling upgrades like coilovers and brakes.
And finally, we added a load of different bolt-on modifications to the engine, and we tuned the car on the dyno to make as much horsepower as possible.
Now, whilst the Sera made 260 horsepower, we still haven't driven this car because there's been one big problem which has been plaguing this car for months.
So in this video, we're going to solve that problem alongside finishing up some final bits that we need to do, all in the hopes of getting this car driving, taking it on that first drive, and then finishing this build for good.
So, because the parts that we need to fix the main big problem with the Sera won't be arriving until slightly later on in the video, we can firstly crack on with some of the smaller jobs that need doing, starting with a new intake for the turbo. And this is what we've come up with. It's a small metal pipe with a bend and some mesh to protect the turbo from anything getting in, and the main reason why I went for this instead of the normal air filter is partially because of the space constraints, but it's mostly because this intake is going to make our turbo sound absolutely amazing.
That's like a ram air as well, isn't it? Right, air's going to be going whoosh into that. Not that that makes any difference, but that is a perfect solution to that, I have to say. No stones will be getting in there.
Okay, next job on the list, we need to tackle our bonnet, because obviously it doesn't have one right now. And a lot of you might remember a few videos ago on the Sera, I showed you a really cool primered bonnet with a bonnet scoop. And the bonnet scoop is the exact same bonnet scoop as the one on the Toyota Glanza. So it really matches our OEM Plus theme that we're going for. So we have now got that bonnet painted absolutely beautifully, and this was done by the guys down at 360 Alloys, and it just looks absolutely beautiful. But I have made a mistake with doing this. Unfortunately, we needed to drill some holes in this bonnet before paint, and we haven't done it. So we are now in a point where we have to drill holes into this bonnet after paint. You can see that on this bonnet we've got these two little holes here, and those are for the sort of washer jets, and we don't have them on this bonnet. So the first thing we need to do, there is a lot of jobs we need to do with this bonnet, but the first thing we need to do is drilling those holes in this fresh paintwork, which is going to make me very nervous, but we've got to do it, so let's give it a go.
So to get the holes for the washer jets perfectly drilled into our new bonnet, the first step is to measure exactly where these holes need to go so that they're centered.
How confident are we that this is perfect? It's only, this bonnet only took 3 months to arrive and 2 weeks to paint, and £500. Okay, let's give it a go.
So after marking down where we thought was the perfect place to drill these holes, I could then get my brave hat on and start drilling.
That is scary.
No going back now.
No going back now. That's where they're going.
That's where they're going, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
Now, because fiberglass is so brittle, the technique I was using to try and prevent cracks and damage in the paintwork was to gradually go up in sizes of drill bit from 4mm all the way up to 11.5.
Pretty damn perfect if you ask me.
Pretty good. Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, that's not terrible.
So now those holes were drilled with pretty much no damage to the paintwork, which I was very pleased with, we could then move on to doing a bit of filing. And the reason why I needed to do this was because I needed to make the holes in our new bonnet match the shape of the holes you can see here in the old bonnet. This was a pretty long process of filing and then checking to see if the washer jets would fit, and then doing more filing and so on and so forth. But after a bit of experimenting, we could then eventually get the washer jets fitted.
Yes! Let's go! That took so much time. Yes! That is so sick. That looks OEM.
They look sick.
That looks, mate. We've done a banging job there.
I could then do the same thing on the other side. So next up, we had to transfer over these rubber seals from the old bonnet to our new one, and again, this needed a bit of drilling. Then the seal just clips into place. So the next thing we have to fit onto the bonnet is actually this interesting looking custom piece of metal, and this is our new bonnet latch. But before fitting it on, we firstly got to make a few adjustments to it with the angle grinder.
Okay, So that is now our little hole made into our piece of metal. And the reason why we needed to do that is because this is going to be on the bonnet, and when the latch comes up and hooks over this piece of metal, it is actually going to poke through that hole. Obviously without the hole, it would just be crashing into the metal and the bonnet wouldn't close properly. But before we get this on the bonnet, I do want to give Toyota Industries a quick shout out because they have sent us out this awesome workbench, which is really high quality, British built as well, and they've just sent it out to us. So yeah, if you guys want a workbench, I'll leave a link to them in the description of this video. But for now, let's get this repainted and on our bonnet.
So after quickly getting the base of the bonnet latch painted, I could then get it bolted up. Now there's just 4 holes, which of course need 4 bolts to secure it into place.
Yeah, that looks so sick. Oh, I'm so pleased with this bonnet. Look how good that is.
Yeah, sick. It's coming together now.
It actually is. Test to see if it works. Okay, so. Yes! That is perfect. And this is the scary bit. You're like. Oh my god, it works so well. That is awesome. Right, we are literally down to the final bit now, which is getting in the bonnet scoop. And then, finally, this bonnet is ready to go on the car. So to get the bonnet scoop fitted, we just used a load of Tiger Seal and then some masking tape to hold the bonnet scoop in the correct place whilst it's set. Now you also probably saw that jack we had sitting underneath the bonnet scoop, and that's just there to support it whilst the Tiger Seal sets.
Okay, so that is our solution to installing the bonnet scoop. Now, we've had to do all sorts of trickery to try and get this bonnet scoop to fit. We've actually stacked up 4 wheels underneath it with a jack so that we can control the height of the bonnet scoop, because it essentially, if you have nothing on it and nothing supporting it, it just sinks down and it's like not flush with the bonnet at all. So we've had to have a jack to like support it up, and then loads of tape to keep it flush, and then we've put so much Tiger Seal underneath. It's really just not a very well built bonnet, to be honest. That's the problem. But I think this is a good solution, that the bonnet scoop will look good. It's not going to be perfect, but it will look good, hopefully by the morning when this sets. But for now, we can move on to the next thing. And that next thing is installing the bonnet latch. Now, the bonnet latch sits just here on this sort of front piece of metal, but there is a problem. This front piece of metal is very, very bendy, and the bonnet actually can't close if this was just bolted up like this and left like that. Now, the standard car has a piece of metal which attaches to that little bolt and also a bolt behind, and then it goes all the way down to the bottom crash bar, and that sort of beam provides support for the bonnet latch so that when the bonnet closes, it doesn't just bend down and collapse because this piece of metal is flexible. So, we obviously can't use the standard piece because the intercooler is in the way. So what we've had to do is come up with a very interesting solution which uses the standard piece. But what we've done is we've welded it onto this piece of stainless steel. And now that piece of stainless steel will bolt onto the top of the intercooler through these 2 holes. And then the bonnet latch will sit in there just like that, and then Bob's your uncle, it is supported. This took a lot of fabrication, and this was actually my brainchild, so I'm very proud of it. But now we can get it all bolted up and test to see if it works.
Get this on. And now that can sit in there. Cool. That is now on. So, as you can see, now when the bonnet closes and pressure goes down on that, that is pretty damn strong. So that should solve that issue.
Okay, so now that is finished, we can move on to just getting the front end of the Sera back together.
So as for building up the front end, the first thing I could install were the headlights. And once the first headlight was fitted, I could then move on to the driver's side one, and then after both of them were on, I could then get on the front bumper.
Okay, so that is now the bumper fitted, and you might notice that we now have this awesome wide mouth. The bumper did have a grille covering this, but we thought it was way cooler to cut this out. I just think it looks absolutely mega.
So once the under trays were fitted, the last things to get on were the mud flaps and the wheel arch liners. So as you can see, the bonnet scoop is now set and it's in its final position, and I think we absolutely nailed this. I don't think we could have done that much better. It is perfectly flush and there's pretty even gaps all the way around it. So now that's done, we can lift the bonnet into place and get it fitted.
Big moment. Oh my god, that looks insane. Oh. Is it close? No, it doesn't close!
So to begin with, the bonnet didn't close properly, but after a little bit of adjusting with the latch, we then tried again.
Let's go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what do we think of that bonnet? I think it is absolutely beautiful. It really sets the car off. This is what it needed, a bit of aggression. And you've got that bonnet scoop on there now, and with the intercooler that you can see in the front bumper, this has got to be like the coolest looking front end of any car I've done on the channel. It's so sick. Now, there are a few problems. It's not perfect. Like the panel gaps are horrendous. Especially here, you can see it's really close there and not very close there. It needs a lot of adjusting, but it's not something we're going to try and get perfected now because we've already spent a ridiculous amount of time on this bonnet. The next thing I want to quickly do is try and get the washer jets working, and then we can move on to what I've got planned next.
So to quickly test and see if the washer jets still worked, I could connect the washer fluid piping to our washer jets and then give it a test.
It's such a small thing, washer jets. But like, if you don't have them, it's annoying. I think it's this one. How do you even activate them? I don't even know.
What is this?
Oh, it's a little button. There's a little button.
Okay, ready?
There's a little button.
Yes!
Let's go! Yes! It's a tiny thing, but that is just... how much effort went into just putting those two little washer jets in the bonnet?
Oh, too much.
But bro, now we have it. This car's like OEM. Okay, so the next little thing I want to sort on the Sera is to do with these rubber bushes. As you can see, these lower arms have rubber bushes there and there. And those rubber bushes have been in this car for 30 plus years. So they're going to have degraded and they're going to make the handling of the car worse. It's going to feel less direct. So to fix that, I wanted to try and find some new bushes. So I went to Powerflex on their website. They do sell them, but they don't stock them, so they have to wait until enough people have ordered them to then bulk purchase them for themselves, then they can sell them to everyone else. No one is buying these bushes, so that option we couldn't do. The next option was trying to find some from Toyota, trying to find some OEM bushes, some new OEM ones. Again, Toyota have discontinued it. So what is the solution? Well, I found these brand new lower arms on eBay, and they have new bushes on them, as you can see there and also there. So even though these are technically the exact same bushes as the one on the car already, because they're brand new, they're going to make the car feel a lot better when driving. So let's get these on.
So in order to get our new lower arms fitted, the first step was to just loosen off the anti-roll bar.
Cool, and then we just undo this, undo that, undo those three. I think, oh, and this.
And once that was done, we could then undo all of the bolts connecting the lower arms to the car, and then the lower arms could be taken out.
There we go. Nice. One old lower arm. Ooh.
So after the old lower arms had been removed, I could then give these metal brackets a quick refurb with some black paint, and then I could get the new lower arms fitted.
Okay, so now before we do up these final two bolts for our new lower arms, we have another modification which I found, which I'm not honestly entirely sure what it does, but it is blue, so it matches everything, and it basically is going to sit like that. So when we bolt up the last bolt on the lower arm, we can attach this on. And I think the research I've done is it stops sort of the subframe like squishing together. It just adds a little bit more strength. Again, I think it will help our handling a little bit, but it was only 60 quid, so I thought we may as well use it. So let's get this on.
So to get our new strengthening bar fitted and to finish up installing our lower arms, the first thing to do was to use the gearbox jack to line up the bolt holes.
Put that in there.
And then the bolts could be tightened up.
That'll do.
And after getting everything fitted, we did go around all of the nuts and bolts to make sure all of them were tightened properly.
That looks good though. What do you think?
I like it.
Good little upgrade. But yeah, that looks good. New arms, new bushes. We do have to do these up, the anti-roll bar things, but other than that, we are pretty much done.
So after rebolting back up the anti-roll bar, I think it was looking pretty good underneath the car now, and this is definitely going to help improve our handling.
Okay, so we can now finally start tackling the big problem which has been plaguing the Sera for a very long time now, and it is these rear brakes. Now, these are off a Toyota Glanzer. For those of you who've watched the previous videos, you'll know that, but these brakes have a bit of a habit. Every single second-hand set you can possibly buy basically are all seized. The caliper pistons are seized, and these were the same when we bought them. I didn't know about it when I did buy them, and turns out that we couldn't wind the caliper pistons back, and also on both of these brakes which are on the car currently, I broke the bleed nipples, meaning it needed to be drilled out, which ruined the threads on the bleed nipples, which is all bad. So not only are these seized, they're also, the bleed nipples are unusable. So, what is our solution? Well, I have been searching high and low for another set of these brakes because they are literally like hen's teeth to find. And I have finally managed to secure a fully refurbished and repainted in black, so it matches our theme, a refurbished set of brakes, which as you can see from that piston, they've got new pistons in there, and these ones aren't seized, according to the person who sold them to me. So that is good and will hopefully fix our problem, which means we will be able to brake, which means we'll then be able to drive this car. But also on top of doing the brakes right now, we are also going to add these, which are spacers, and that is going to make our wheel sit out more. They'll sit on like that, but you can also see there's another problem here. These studs are nowhere near long enough for these 15mm spacers, so they actually come with these studs, which are sort of lengthened studs, and that will allow us to bolt the wheels up as well as these spacers. And then on top of that, there's even more. The rear beam on this car, we've decided we want to refurbish, similar to what we did on the Ford Fusion. We want to make it sort of nice black coat of paint and just rust free, and we also want to put on these polyurethane bushes from Powerflex. Now, these are very hard to find, and we've had to pick them up second hand, but they weren't used, so they are basically brand new, and they are going to sit sort of in that little section of the rear beam up there. And that is going to help our handling a little bit as well. So there's a lot to get on with. The main thing we're going to do is take the rear beam down, and then we can just build it up out of the car, and then hopefully reinstall the whole thing. So let's go.
So to remove the rear beam, I've got to disconnect the handbrake cables, the brake lines, I've got to remove the panhard bar, also I've got to disconnect the bottom of the coilovers, and once that's done, there's just two main bolts that hold in the rear beam, and then it can be removed.
Right, got it.
So once I had removed the rear beam, I could then start disassembling it. So this includes removing the brakes alongside the bearings and also the caliper mounting points. But by far the most difficult part of doing this is taking out the old bushes. There's no proper way of doing this, and you've just sort of got to attack them for a long time with different power tools and hope they eventually come free.
Hey.
Next up, we could then start attacking the rear beam with wire wheel attachments on our power tools. Now, this is probably the longest part of the process. It does take absolutely ages, but the paint would be rubbish if we didn't remove this rust, so it's all got to go. But once all of the rust was removed and the surfaces were prepped, we could then apply a nice thick coat of black paint.
Okay, so that is now the rear beam completely refurbished in black paint, and I think this is looking a heck of a lot better. I am very glad we went to all of that effort. But now that is done, we need to start building it back up again with all of the parts that are on the bench here. We've got obviously those new Glanzer rear brake calipers, our polyurethane bushes, our brake discs need to go back on, which have the bearings inside of them. But before we actually start fitting all this stuff on, we firstly got to knock out the old studs. As I mentioned, they are too short for our spacers, so we need to put these longer studs in, and the method to do that is really easy. You literally just get a hammer, knock out the old studs, and then you can just sort of press the new ones in. Simple as that, so let's get going. It looks quite aggressive. That is how you do it.
Look quite aggressive. Getting scared, mate.
But look, you can see that is the difference.
Way longer.
Way longer. So basically, the way to do it, I've seen all the professionals, they get like a nut on it, and then they like do up the nut and it like pulls it up. Put him on there, and then oh, that worked, look at that.
Yeah,
that is loads better. So I think it needs a tiny bit more aggression. Yeah, threads are fine.
Okay.
There you go. There we are. 1 down, 7 to go.
So I could then focus on getting the rest of the studs installed onto the brake discs.
And that is 1 done. Look at that. That is class, doesn't it?
Yeah, they're good.
And that is our brake disc number 2, all done.
So now I can move on to just building up the rear beam so that it's ready to be installed onto the car. And the first thing to go on is the brake disc and bearing assembly. Once that was done, I could then get our new brake calipers installed. And once that one was done, I could then do the same thing on the other side.
Okay, so as for fitting on the polyurethane bushes, it is very simple. All we have to do is just sandwich those two in like that. Then we grab our grease and we can grease up the inside, not the outside, which is what a lot of people do. The inside of the bushes, put the grease in those holes just there, because that's where it sort of pivots. And then to lock it into place, you can get this metal thing and then just give it a little tippy tap. That is it, fitted. It is so easy. Let's go and do the other side.
And after the other side was done, the rear beam was then fully built up. So now that was all done, I could go ahead and get the rear beam fitted onto the Sera for the final time. Then I could get the handbrake cables and the brake lines reconnected back up to the brake calipers.
So guys, that is now a fully refurbished rear beam with extended studs, refurbished rear brakes and polyurethane bushes now fitted onto the Sera, and we are so close now to being able to drive this car, and I am so excited. It's probably the most excited I've ever been for any of the projects, because I have to say I think this one is my favourite. But before we can drive the car, there are still a few jobs left to do, and one of them is to do with the front. As you can see, we have already removed the brakes because I want to fit spacers onto the front as well as the rear, but instead of 15mm spacers, we are just going to go with 5s because it didn't need as much on the front. And to do that, again, we need to install our extended wheel nut studs. So let's crack on with that, and then we can bleed the brakes, and then it's ready for that drive.
So the technique to install the lengthened studs on the front is the exact same as doing it on the rear. You've firstly got to absolutely whack out the old studs, and then we can use a nut and the big gun to pull the new studs through.
All done. All done. Oh, that's hard work.
Hard work, mate. You're putting in a shift.
Yeah. Like, it's the gun's doing all the work, but also it's hard work, I don't know.
So once the new studs have been installed, I could then get the brakes refitted. And then I could do the exact same thing on the other side. Now, the last thing we had to do before we could put our wheels and spacers on was to bleed the brakes. And to do this, we used the old trusty method of having your mate on the brake pedal whilst you open and close the bleed nipple.
Down. Nice.
And to finish off this build once and for all, the final thing to do was to get the wheels on with our new spacers.
Look at the fitment. Is that like absolutely perfect or what? It actually looks insane. That is, the fronts are pretty much absolutely bang on. The rears are loads better, but to be honest, it could have done, like, we could have got away with a 20mm spacer on that. Yeah, genuinely, but like, it's still loads better. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I never thought I'd be saying this, but that is now the Toyota Sera project finally complete. Back in February, we set out with one goal, and that was to build the performance version of the Toyota Sera that Toyota never made. And I think we have done a pretty good job with all of the upgrades and modifications that we've done to this car. But for those of you who have watched the series, you will know it was not plain sailing. We have had a lot of stuff go wrong. We've bought 2 engines for this car that went wrong, that were completely unusable. We've had so many parts that, again, were either really rare and hard to find, that got lost in the mail, that were broken when they arrived. Just so much stuff behind the scenes where this build has gone wrong. And I think persistence is key is a catchphrase which perfectly sort of embodies what this project has been about. So to sort of commemorate that, we are releasing some merch that you can look at on the screen right now. Some for the Sera and also some for the Honda Jazz as well, because I know a lot of you love that build that we did earlier on the channel. Now, if you want to get your hands on this merch, we will be selling it only at Gravity. So for those of you who are going to that show, you can see us, we'll be on a trade stand there, and you'll be able to pick up either or both of these t-shirts, which I think are pretty cool. But with all that said, the only thing that's left to do now is to take the Sera out on its first drive. But before we do that, I do just want to quickly show you the finished product, the Toyota Sera GT Turbo.
The clutch is very heavy. I love the exhaust note is not like, it's the first car we've done at first driving where it's not been like ridiculously loud.
I don't know if you want.
Wait, the clutch, it feels really nice. It's really heavy, but it feels nice.
Yeah, race car.
It proper feels like a race car, and it sounds good. Right, you ready?
Ready.
Oh my god! Mate, this is ridiculous. Oh, we got a clear road.
Big straight road.
Big straight, right. First gear pull. Come on! Oh my god!
It's so fast.
This thing is seriously quick. Honestly, I'm like struggling. It's also so laggy as well. It like waits and waits and waits, and then it gives you everything right
in that.
This thing is ridiculously quick.
This is nuts. It's that power to weight ratio.
It is literally a crazy power to weight ratio. Oh my god. That's like such an adrenaline rush, isn't it?
That's the heart pumping.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you did go on to enjoy this video and you like the Sera, make sure to smash that like button, click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one.